up, people? Welcome back to episode 9, season 2 of the What's Good podcast. That's a completely different podcast. This is the Over in 80 Minutes podcast, and we're going to keep it in to prove the podcast is natural, because that's probably the funniest thing I'll say all afternoon. I'm joined this week by an absolute superstar. Not only that, she just is incredible. We've been talking off camera, and I haven't stopped smiling because she's so funny. So I'm really looking forward to this. But we'll give her the proper intro she deserves. 15-time select Scotland international sprinter. She's fresh off emphatic wins in Finland, claiming the gold medal for both the W35 200 metres and the 400 metres. She's brought them back to the good old rolling hills of the borders. Stacey Downie, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Sam. How are you doing?
I'm sublime now that you're here. We've had a bit of rush hour traffic to get home to get this organised, but we're here now, and that's what counts.
Yeah.
So, how's the day been?
It's been pretty good, yeah. Just chilling, teacher life when I'm on holiday. So yeah, chilling with the cats, trying to make most of the sunshine, trips to the physio, just enjoying the free time that I've got and trying my best to read, hence all the books behind me in the bookcase. Get those books, some of those read when I can, when I'm off. So yeah, all good here.
You've got the working from home setup sorted. You can't have all the you've got to get the books out, you've got to get everything. You need a couple of clothes hooks. I'll give you some pointers. Clothes hooks and blue tack. That's all you need.
This wall definitely needs some work. So yeah.
But you've just won some things that can get hung up there, so we'll talk about those in a quick minute.
Yeah, sure.
But first, everybody's been loving these questions, and I've loved it because people come up with the most wonderful items that I've never even pictured. So the first one is, what is the favourite bit of memorabilia you've collected yourself in your journeys in the world of athletics?
I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but on my bookcase behind me, I've got a picture with me and Daley Thompson.
Oh, cool.
Grab it if you want. So I was at a training day, and I got a chance to meet him when I was like an
awesome
athlete. So that's us there. It's pretty cool. And my favourite so meeting him would be my favourite kind of photo. My favourite memorabilia actually is this thing that's meant to go up on my wall. It's a picture of John Carlos.
Amazing.
The guy was in the 1968 Black Power Salute, and he became the bronze medalist in the 200 metres. And I was at a talk with him in 2012.
That must have been so inspiring.
Before the Olympics, yeah, he's brilliant. And I got his book as well signed, and his story was just fascinating. So to hear about him standing up for rights for everybody really in sport, not just for Black people, but just for everyone to be treated fairly was really inspiring. And every time I look at that poster, it kind of makes me think that we're doing it for more than just ourselves. We're doing it for other people that are maybe not so fortunate. And I just, it's meeting him, I was kind of starstruck because I was like, well, you've been an Olympic medalist before. Like, that's a huge deal, but you're known for more than just your sport. And I think that's kind of, I'd like to be known for more than just my sport is kind of what I'd like to do before I kind of time's up.
Wow, that's amazing. I say this like there's random sentences I hear on this podcast where I think I know that sentence will stay with me long after the podcast goes and when I'm doing whatever it is old numpties do in their spare time. But that's such a powerful message. I love that. You're like, I'm doing what I'm doing because of the sport, but I know that I want to be remembered for more than the sport. I want to be remembered for me, the person, as much as I am me, the athlete. I love it. That's great. I'm inspired now. I might go out for a run after this, depending on what time we finish, if the light's still there. Amazing. Now, I'm not going with you because you'll smoke me, and that'll be embarrassing. Because I've got one knee between two legs at the best of it. That sounds like an awful phrase. I'm going to rephrase that. God, I'm distracting myself. Now, the next question: the memorabilia you'd love to add to your collection. What would you?
Yeah, it'd probably be. Like, you get those little mini pins that you can swap. Like, you get them for, like, the Commonwealth Games is quite big on them, or like London 2012. I'd quite like to swap pins with somebody from a different country or something from a different country at competitions I've been at. And the only kind of competition that I've been at was in Sweden, where some people swap things. But all they gave me was this little wristband thing that you could put money in or a key. And it was from the athletes from Qatar, which is pretty cool. But the thing that I would quite like to have is something that I've lost, actually. I've got a picture with me and Michael Johnson, and it was on a phone.
Wow.
And he came to Edinburgh in 2006 to the Mound, and he was the special guest for the Scottish Athletics dinner. And my picture on my phone, phone was one of these old flip ones, and quite a cute picture. It's not a great camera. I went off to a trip to Alton Towers that summer, maybe a month later, and I lost my phone. And
Oh,
Of course,
no.
back in the day, you didn't back up your photos the same. And I don't know if I sent it on to my dad or somebody else, but yeah, I've lost the picture. So I'd like the chance to kind of meet him again or to recreate the picture. But again, yeah, if I couldn't do that, probably a signed bib with Alison and Felix. 'Cause I
I
know
love
she's
Alison Felix. She's one of the very few names that I follow out with the Olympic cycle. You know, like I know they're really bad, but it's like the Olympic cycle, the Masters cycle, and the Wimbledon cycle when everybody suddenly starts playing tennis. As we're just fresh off that as a good
oh yeah.
example. But Alison Felix has always been one of the names that has stuck with me and things like that. Out with the British community. But that's amazing. That would be amazing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clip this and we're going to put it on Twitter because I'm going to make sure Michael Johnson sends you or gets another photo with you when he's next in the same place as you.
Oh, I hope so. That'd be so cool.
All the power of this podcast will get you a photo. If my dying mission is to get you a photo with Michael Johnson now, that is my duty to this planet.
Oh, thanks so much, Sam. Let's hope he gets it.
If you do, tell me where you are, and then I'll drive, and then you say, Michael, just hold on 40 minutes because Sam needs to get you on the podcast. That you can return the favor. We'll get you the photo, and you get Michael on here.
I'll try my best. Yeah.
Sorted.
He's out in Oregon at the moment, but he might be across in Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games. He will hopefully be in the country. We hope, but in the UK.
Yeah, well, he's closer. He's closer than he'll be on most days, so we'll have to go from there. Amazing, but Stacey, that's amazing. So you want to swap something from somebody else from a different country at a combined event to have those.
Yeah.
The problem is you need to now get like a bunch of pins. I feel like you need to give every athlete 10 so they can sort of trade them like cards. I feel.
Yeah, because I've got a couple of friends that have been at the Commie Games in the past. They say that they get given your country one, and then you get your lanyard with your pass on it. And quite a few, it's a tradition, I think, to swap pins with someone and to collect as many as you can from different countries. Which would be pretty cool. So yeah, my friend's like, "Can you try and get the Commonwealth Games one for me?" We were out in the Gold Coast a couple of years ago and managed to get her one, so she was delighted. So she's collected them since she competed there herself. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, something like that would be good. A lot of folk trying to swap vests, like the vest you race in.
Yeah.
Easier to do, I think, sometimes if you're a guy and just finish your race and take it off and pass it on, or a t-shirt or something. But yeah, it's not really the done thing to swap spikes or anything.
No, I was going to say because that's quite common where I come from to trade jerseys, and I was going to say that, but obviously it's quite hard with you guys because it's not just team versus team. So you're doing a direct swap. You could think, well, actually, there's potentially 8 other people in the race of 7, and you're thinking, or even at the 400, there's tons. So how do you make a swap with everybody that was there?
I know it's something I've still yet to see. Although I think they could do that, like how in rugby we chatted earlier about you get your first cap.
Yeah.
Like, it would be cool if they can. I know in the GB team you get an ornament or something to nominate your first selection for GB. They do that, but I don't know if they do it in the Scottish team. It'd be pretty cool if they did though. To kind of highlight.
That's amazing. So what we're saying from this to take away is everybody needs to get some sort of memorabilia piece when they go to the Commie Games or the Olympics or something like that.
I would say so. Yeah, because it's things you'll look back on when you're older. Like the pictures mean a lot, but it's like little trinkets or. I'm very much a person for getting a keyring or a fridge magnet or from any country I've been to. So yeah, I probably have tons of stuff of like random countries and things by the end of it. But it's just.
There'll be one day where you can just pull out this box from the loft or under the bed or something, and you can just spend hours just sitting through it.
Exactly, and it'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that day. It was such and such. Our memory's kind of like that. I'd be like, oh yeah, that was the day that I won that, or you can kind of associate things.
Or you'll end up remember it for the random reason. You'll be like, oh, that's the day my pancakes were really burnt. You'll be like, oh, so I won the 400 meters that day.
Oh yeah, you always remember the daft things like that as well, or like the story behind your competition, or trying to get to the competition, the funny journey you've had, or there's always these funny stories.
God, I'm so jealous, and then I'd love to be able to have those memories. But you were the one that was committed, and I was the one that decided to muck about in school. So I don't envy you at all because it was a difficult journey to get there, and you've worked extremely hard. And just to top it all off, now when I get really credible and amazing people on, I put this silly question in the intro, and now I have to ask everybody it. Would you rather have a bourbon or a custard cream with a cup of tea?
It has to be a bourbon.
Yes, there's definitely a thing like this. More south you go, the more likely I am to get custard cream or bourbon. There's definitely a correlation.
Because bourbons, I feel like you can dunk them into your coffee or your tea, and it doesn't take the taste away. But a custard cream's a bit of a different taste. So yeah, I always dunk any biscuit into whatever I'm drinking.
Oh, it's mandatory, yeah.
Yeah.
Cups of coffee are an excuse to have biscuits. That's the way I look at them.
Oh yeah, and if it falls in, that's the unfortunate thing. But
It's a risky game we all play. Amazing, Stacey. That was the quick fire questions and the memorabilia sorted. You passed that flying colours, in my personal opinion. Some brilliant answers and some brilliant memorabilia you've got. I think I never expected you to pull up that photo. That was amazing. I love that. That's so good. So we're going to go back to the very, very start of the journey for yourself, all the way back to good old People's High. Can't beat it. So when did you discover athletics? How did it come to find you?
Yeah, so I'm from West London originally, and I kind of did the county sports.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a regional competition held in Peebles every year, and I got asked to do the relay. But I think you could enter yourself every year in P1 up the way. So I think Mum and Dad noticed I was quite fast, but my brother was 2 years older. He was quite quick as well, so we both did it. So I remember being in P1 and watching my brother run, but we were too late for my race, and I was just like, oh well, like I was quite upset about it, but seeing my brother get a medal was pretty cool. But then like P2, P3, P4, I ended up winning it, and I was like, well, this is pretty fun, you know, like it's just like a race like at sports day. Didn't really think much of it until got to the kind of second half of primary school in P5, and I remember getting third, and I was thinking that sucked. Like third, still good, and you still got a medal. But I remember that, like, you always remember these different stories, and I remember going, Mum afterwards was like, yeah, you were wearing new like trainers. They were too big for you. Like you probably weren't able to run as quick, and I should have run in bare feet. And I always remember laughing at my mum talking about these big trainers, and I was like, that's how I got third. But then after that, I was like, well, I'm not getting beaten again. So it was often the same girls every year.
Yeah.
In P6 and 7, I did the hunt, like the shorter sprint, like the 80 meters or 100 meter sprint, and I won them both again, which was pretty cool. And we had the 4x1 relay, and it was the old school relays where you had to like hit the wooden thing down for you to be freed.
Oh, right, yeah.
Stuck, so you couldn't like cheat. You had to physically hit that, and it's obviously to encourage people to not cheat. I remember being on the last leg for that and finishing at Whitstone Park up towards the kind of pavilion, and I was thinking, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And my auntie and my uncle were there watching, and I've got a really cool picture of me. I can't think of where it'll be offhand, but of me with my sweatshop jumper, my white socks on, my white shorts. It's like, you know, classic 98 picture of me with my sweatshop jumper, which everybody had. That's kind of where running started for me, because it wasn't like there wasn't any clubs or anything growing up that I did when I was in primary school, but there was like gymnastics and badminton and netball, so I did all those.
Right.
But we had like every year you have your festival, and the Whitman Play was our festival, so I used to always win the races or do the wheelbarrow race and place and stuff and do it for fun. But you know, my friends would often be like, oh, can you not enter, because you know we want a chance? And I'm like, what are you on about? Like, I'm just doing my thing here. So I was probably competitive without even noticing it. But it wasn't until like, you know, I noticed, you know, when I look back now, it's things like I got asked to play in the netball team for school with like the P7s had their own team, but the P6s were playing, and I was like the only P5s to get asked, can you play with the P6s? And I thought, well, that's pretty cool, but I didn't think anything of it at the time that I was actually quite good or anything. And then kept playing through primary school, so I had quite a wide upbringing of like sports I did, and then went to high school. Still hadn't found athletics at this point.
You're just doing other sports, and then there happens to be that running at the town festival.
Yeah, so I found that I was quite good at it, but never realised it was a club, or you know, there's never clubs growing up. There was nothing in Peebles that I was aware of either. And we did, you know, the infamous bleep test at high school, and back and forth.
Is that a Mr. Henderson special?
That was a Mr. Henderson special. First year is how to terrorise them. So I remember my brother telling me about this. He's like, yeah, it's pretty hard. Like, all you have to do is run back and forth in between these bleeps, and you're trying to beat the bleep, and you know, just keep running until you're worn out, basically. So yeah, I was that competitive that I was like, oh yeah, there's some guys still in here. Cool, I'll keep going. And I got, you know, I did pretty well. And again, 13-1 when I was 13 is quite ridiculous. I think
that's mental.
Higher than a lot of people in the year. And I was thinking, okay, I've just, you know, I cycled everywhere I was growing up, or jogged places, ran places. I was never, you know, growing up in the country. That's
such a borders thing as well, yeah. Like nobody thinks anything of cycling between towns here.
No, and it's just like the done thing. So there's nothing. I did have like a PlayStation growing up, but you're never in the house unless you were like had to be if the weather was bad. So
Yeah.
I think that really helped me because like having a wide range of sports helped me, I think, keep pretty active in all of them. And by the time I got to high school, I started playing hockey and I kept that going. And it wasn't until we discovered that trying to try out for I think it was like the Scottish Schools Relay Championships. Mrs. Hunter, she spotted that I was quite quick in first year, and there's 3 girls in the year above me that they needed this one other girl to make the under 14 team, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Okay, I could maybe do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they selected me to go along to try out for it, and I got picked, which was pretty cool. And I ran the first leg through in Glasgow at Scotstoun, and it's the first time I've ever won a medal, like for anything out with like your regional sports or anything. So at the time, I didn't realise that being Scottish School champions is quite a big deal. I was like, cool, we've just won a really gold, and doing the bleep test and doing all that. I was like, I actually quite like this running thing. Didn't know much about. I didn't train for it or anything. It was just general fitness had come from other sports. And then Mrs. Hunter's like, we do have a local coach you could join. His name's Charlie Russell. He's based in Leithen. He trains in Peebles, and there's quite a few athletes that train with him.
Okay.
Pass on the details, and then the rest is history. Started training with him a couple of times a week. I'm very grateful to my mum and dad who traipsed me from West Linton back to Peebles and back again, because it would be like right after school you'd train and then get picked up and go home. So that's kind of where it all started. It was actually Peebles Rugby Club was my very first ever session. We're doing some circuits in there.
Up at the old the chicken hut, the chat.
Yeah, on the left hand side is going the park. Yeah, so that was my very first ever training session in athletics. Going in and getting shown how to do proper circuit training. So that was that's way back in 99 or 2000, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like 12 at the time.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so jealous of what you said about natural fitness, and I'm all right at this running thing because I'd give anything to be able to run as well as you do naturally. But I love that you genuinely just found a love for sport just by being active, and you found what has turned into not your personality, because there's so much more to Stacey Downie than there is running, but what you now consider as like, a lot of the decisions you do in life are based on, does this complement my running? Does this complement my athletics? Does this, as an opposite strand, will this affect my running in any way? Which I'm sure you've had to make a lot of tough decisions on as your life, as we'll probably discuss. But so you talk nicely about Charlie Russell, the coach.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So so like you said, you just discovered circuit training for the first time, which is never fun for anybody, especially at 13, 14. When did that? So was this when you started looking? Was running still a fun hobby to you then, or were things starting to turn in your cog? Like, was Charlie going, "You kid, you're good at this. If you start thinking of it in this way, there's no end to this journey," or was it still just, I'm just having fun? Like, I get myself out of school a few days here and there to go and run against other people. Because that was a big mindset for me, was if you play for the rugby team, you get every couple of Fridays off to go play rugby.
Yeah, I'd say like at the start, I was always quite a shy teenager, to be honest. Like, I think sport was a way of expressing myself. As soon as like the gun would go, or like any PE sport activity, I would switch from the shy person to, right, I'm ready to play now. So I think with Charlie, that he was quite an easy to chat to kind of person. Didn't ever pressure me into doing things, but he was so enthusiastic that you couldn't help get wound up in what he was trying to say to you. So he did sell the kind of bit at the start about, everyone here has won a medal at Scottish Championships. And I was like, well, this sounds pretty cool. And he'd seen me at the county sports, actually.
Right.
So when I was in P7, he kind of knew, like, there was a couple of athletes, like a P6 girl that trained with him already. So he knew of me before I actually came. He knew, because he was keen on running himself, and I think his family had done it all. And he'd been training athletes for a good 10, 15 years at this point. And he did take me along to the infamous Kelvin Hall through in Glasgow.
Oh, right, yeah.
I was only, I think, under 13 at the time. I think I had my first ever race indoors through there. And, I wasn't like, by any means, I wasn't even getting out of my heat. I was maybe 5th in my heat or something. But it allowed me to be in an environment with like other athletes around. I kind of was quite a small teenager, but all of a sudden, age 15, 16, I kind of sprouted up like 5 inches. So to be like 7 stone and 5 foot tall, and then all of a sudden you're 5'6" and you're like 8.5 stone is quite a big difference as a teenage girl. So he never pressured me too much, like when I was maybe early kind of years at high school. But the one thing he did encourage us to do was the Highland Games that are around in the local towns. So in Ethan, he's from the St. Onan Games, and up into Fife and all the kind of Inverkey then, Montrose, the way up as far as that. Braemar, I ran up there once in front of the Queen. That was pretty cool when I was 16.
In that in the tiny one where she's got the little hut on the mound.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that must have been cool.
So yeah, like my whole kind of childhood was spent about, okay, right, the games season is from the end of May until the start of September. Every weekend there's one on pretty much, but he would help you work out what events and which ones to go to. And it was a bit of a mix between Peebles or Jedburgh and all these kind of big ones, and way up to Fife and all along. So I remember when I was, done it for a couple of years, went up to Braemar, and my coach was like, "Now, if you win this, you get to meet the Queen." And I was like, "Well, that sounds pretty cool." And of course, I came second, so I didn't get that chance, but it's still pretty cool to have done that as I was growing up. So my childhood was very much spent, as you can imagine, like training. I probably saw Charlie in the training group more than I did my own family sometimes. I was doing it more for enjoyment to start with, and as I realised that, I did do some of the championship events when I was younger. I was never the best though, so I'd be the best I ever got from the age of 12 was like a third place at Scottish Champs, or a second in like 12.9, which is still pretty quick for like a 12-year-old. But I was never like outstanding. I'd be in the rankings, I'd maybe be 25th or something in the rankings. I'd be well done. But then as the age groups went on and as I got older, like up to age 16, I was maybe in the top 10 of the rankings and so on. So I kind of kept edging my way up there. But again, I was always fourth in championship races. I was always fourth in league races against like Scottish Women's League would be against all like your top clubs. It would be like Edinburgh versus Glasgow versus like the Fife clubs and so on, and Aberdeen. And I'd always get fourth because the top three girls that would always medal at championships would be in every single race with me. So I'm kind of, it's funny how I wasn't put off by all that though. So I think for some reason, I think because I still had hockey when I was going up kind of the end of fourth year, I didn't really notice like I wasn't improving or anything. So I probably was gradually improving, but I wasn't like getting loads of medals to show for it. But I was winning some money in the Highland Games scene, which was interesting. So I'd maybe win like a tenner if I'd been sixth or something. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was just like got to 2003 it was. I was 16 at the time, and I remember Charlie saying to me, like, if you really want to give running a go, you're going to have to drop hockey. And I was like,
oh, that's mental to tell a kid that at 16.
So for me to be able, because I was a right defender, so the chance of me getting hit with the ball, I think I'd be knocked out once. And I was really good at defender. I loved tackling. I'd still would have played if I'd had the chance to do both. Went on the infamous Peebles hockey tour, and when I was in third year, I absolutely loved it. The chance to be around the other athletes in Canada was really cool as well. And yeah, to be a chance to be a part of a team as well. So it very much, I never specialised when I was young. I think, I was maybe 16 when I trained just for running. But at that point, the sessions that I would do hockey, so that might be 2-3 times a week, I dropped that. But then I then changed to doing, instead of 2 days a week running or 3 days, it now became 5. So the change between being like the young adult Stacey kind of grown up into high school, and I was always one of these people, I would get like unnecessarily anxious about a lot of things. I don't know if it's just a me thing, but trying to juggle too many plates and like spin too many plates. I remember Charlie having faith in me, saying, "No, I think you could do pretty well here if you committed yourself." So to try and tell this to Miss Strang, though, that I was unfortunately going to have to stop playing hockey, don't think she was happy. But again, if you're losing one of the fastest players in the team,
you're never happy when you lose a star player.
So I'm just very grateful that it paid off. Could easily have went the other way, and that I got like an injury and I couldn't run. You never know, but yeah, it was.
Wow. So I really want to talk about, because what you said there was really like potent about how you spoke about how your attitude never diminished after consistently coming fourth, which is, as much as there still is a first and a second, a fourth is like a real big hitter in athletics because you're not on the podium. So what do you put that down to? Because to have what is mental fortitude at 16 and almost your love, because it comes through when you talk, your love for just competing in sport. is infectious. So how did you have that? Was it just a case of you like, oh, I've come forth again. Oh well, there's another race next week. I'll go do that. Or was it because you had the other sports that you thought, okay, well, I lost here, so you best believe I'm going to win this thing now that I'm annoyed because I've just lost here?
So yeah, I think the person, I think like unbeknownst to me, I think my family have probably instilled this kind of competitiveness in me. I think my dad's side of the family, he's the youngest of 7, and they were all farmers.
Christ, that's a Borders family if ever I've heard one there.
Definitely, and he went to school in Peebles, and he was very good at like he did javelin at school, but he did it more for like he was good at it from doing it in PE, but never followed it up. And then on my mum's side, she was good at long jump and like sprinting. Again, just at school side, never like having followed it up when left school or anything. But I think my dad's side of the family are so competitive that they would go into all the local sports day stuff up here for the women and win everything.
Okay.
So I think I've kind of had that around me that, like if I was in a race, that they've always encouraged me. But I'd say, between my family, but also Charlie was the person that like he valued improvement, but never
Right.
like it was never about times for him. It was always about what medals you've won or what have you won. So if you won something, doesn't matter what time you ran, you won something. So if you won a medal, you won a medal, and nobody can take that away from you. So I think that kind of attitude of never know what time I ran in training when I was younger. Everybody's obsessed with a time, I think, because everyone's like, oh, like the magic barrier for sprinting is always like 12 seconds for girls at a decent standard. It's like, have I run it? You'd always ask and see how fast I was going. He would just shake his head. He wouldn't tell me, and I think.
I thought you meant shake his head as in you haven't ran it. He just wouldn't tell you at all. So he knew how fast you were going.
No, I never did. I think I trained with him for a good 10, 11 years, and I never knew once what I ran in training. It was always his reaction though that would give me away. He'd be like, "Oh, it's amazing!" Like he'd look at the stopwatch and kind of do some funny comedy thing with it. You'd run with other people, so you kind of start laughing to yourself. And we didn't have like fancy facilities, so I don't think it ever kind of made me think like, am I doing like I didn't really know what other people had, so I just literally would turn up, train, and social media wasn't around. So I think that was the benefit of having a small bubble, being from like a small village, training with other people. So as soon as you go to all these fancy competitions, I'm like, wow, a track. I don't know what that is. Like, because all the Highland Games were held on grass as well. So I didn't have like, I trained in all weathers. You didn't have the fancy like indoor facilities or anything. If it was raining, you went out in it. And if it was torrential rain, you hid under a bus shelter or nearby, house awning or down at Innerleithen, they had like the lovely bit you could stand underneath the kind of garagey bit next to the pitch.
Oh and yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
you stand there and wait, and then if Charlie was being kind, you'd stand there for 5 minutes or so. If not, you'd be like, right, get on with it, and you just get on with it. And I think the kind of steeliness of just not being fazed by weather or by things you can't control. Yeah, Charlie kind of instilled that in me, I would say. I've always probably had it in me, but he kind of reaffirmed it. And yeah, he reminded me of what I was doing it for.
Wow.
And what I was there to do and to make every race count. So yeah, even through high school, like it paid off to focus on my running, because when I was 16, I had an amazing year in the Highland Games circuit, winning about maybe 20 races across the year, which is quite unheard of for a young girl to be doing that. I think I was one of the first people to be awarded. It was like Women of the Year, like Sports Person of the Year for the Highland Games circuit, which is great. And I think back, like Laura Muir's had it, Sarah Inglis, that's the Commonwealth Games. Like it's quite a few big names have had this. But I was one of the first to do it. And it was quite cool from there, my running coach has always had ties with Australia and big meetings out there in Victoria. There's a place called the Stall Gift. It's like the equivalent of the New Year Sprint, which is actually being held this weekend, bizarrely enough, in Meadowbank it's been postponed because of venue problems. But the New Year's
they just rebuilt it, haven't they? Always in Meadowbank.
Yeah, it just opened last week. It's a great facility. So he was like, right, we need to get a trip across to Australia, and he got in touch, and I was in my
He makes it sound a lot easier than it is there.
Yeah, just he was like, right, we're going to do it. So you're still at school and obviously not earning as much money or as other people wanting to go. But I did a fundraising kind of walk along the Innerleithen and Walkerburn Hills for about 14 miles, did a sponsored walk.
Oh, nice.
Raised all the money for me to go. So it was a pretty cool trip. And And I found out, I didn't know this at the time, but an idol of mine growing up had been, I'd watched Cathy Freeman win the Olympics in Sydney in 2000. And I didn't realise that she'd ran at the Stall Gift as well in the 400 metres years ago before I'd been there. And she won it from scratch, from like the 0 mark, which is again, ridiculous. And I actually went back to Stall a couple of years ago in 2018, and I got the red back markers bib that she'd worn, like the same colour. So I thought I've made this. Like to be the back marker is a big deal in women's sprinting anyway. But yeah, it's something that we went on a trip to Australia in 2005. The 10 of us went across and competed. And yeah, it was amazing. I took my 6th year higher and advanced higher stuff with me. So I was over there. So missed my 6th year ball.
I'll be honest with you. I think you've got better memories than the ball. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, what would you pick? I think it's quite a big. Yeah. Well, at the time it was a tough one, but yeah. When I look back,
I know what you mean. Everything in high school is the most important thing. So that's still a bit. That's amazing, especially as you say, to have what so many other famous names have done as well at the Stall, go into these places of iconic athletic heritage. That is impressive. And then as you're doing it, as you're trying to get ready for uni, you're trying to just survive high school, which is tough enough in itself. That's which is bad for the podcast, but I'm generally struggling for words to compliment you on how incredible your attitude actually was at such a young age. And following on nicely from that, and we just mentioned uni there, as you were telling me before we just came on, like we just hit the record button, you said yourself, and you spoke about being 4th consistently. You really started to notice the success come into your sport at the ages of 18 onwards. Yeah. So can you talk me through training? Like you said, you went to 5 times a week training, doing advanced hires, which is no easy feat. And then I assume you kept up the 5-day-a-week training as you got into uni.
Yeah, it was actually, I found school harder than uni actually. So yeah, I don't know if I was one of the athletes that thought, yeah, 5 hires sounds a great idea. I'll do that. I probably should have done, in hindsight, 4 hires in like an easy subject. But if you get like 6 1s and 2 2s, like I did at standard grade, which I was pretty proud of, quite academic, but I was one of these people that was overly conscientious. Like I made sure I knew everything about that exam and so on. When it came to higher, it's a different kettle of fish from standard grades. The step up was pretty high. So I got halfway through the year, got to the February prelims, and I remember higher maths was always one of these ones that was always pretty tough anyway. And I just thought, I'm not going to do myself justice here. I need to watch my work-life balance. That's the only time when I was at school that I really thought, wow, this is getting too much. So I think at that point, I dropped one of my hires. I think that's the smartest thing to do, so it didn't jeopardize the other 4. Yeah. That's probably why I did pretty well after that in my final exam. But also 1 day a week, my training was to be held back in West London. I'd do it on my own. So that I'd have an hour a night for studying. And I think my coach actually would come up with a couple other athletes and we'd go and train in my garage gym, or we'd go and run up in the local pitch and stuff. So you'd end up having that work-life balance, or, like school life balance that you needed. But yeah, you're right. Like I found it easier when I went to university. I don't know if it's that freedom over your routine. Your lectures might be like 9 till 3, but you might have an hour gap somewhere in the middle. You get your lunch, and I was pretty good at always making sure I did my uni work at uni. I don't know if I was one of these weird people that just did it as soon as I got it. And
you're the student most of us wished we were, is what you are, Stacey.
I think I just enjoyed what I was doing. I had I had a couple of decisions to make before I went to uni. I was like, well, do I go down the history and psychology route, which I loved history, it was a real passion of mine, or do I go down the sport and exercise science route and with psychology? And I thought, well, I love sport, so it's one of these things of, is it going to be too much sport, or is it going to be interesting enough? So I love my sciencey. So like between history and kind of biology, they were my main subjects I loved alongside PE. And there wasn't a higher PE subject that we could do at the time. There wasn't anything like that. And I was like, well, that would have been a really good subject for me to have done. So I ended up like with my biology, chemistry, and history alongside English and maths. And and after I kind of dropped maths in 5th year, I took it up again in 6th year, and that was a good idea because it meant I could then have fun with my advanced higher history. And as you do in 6th year, kind of find all these other subjects to fill the gaps, like crash hour modern studies and stuff. So ended up going to uni in quite a good place, got my kind of 6, 7 hires, my advanced hire. And I always felt I could get a balance between my training my work-life balance and also uni. So when I went to uni, I was at Heriot-Watt University, stayed at home for the first 3 years. I think that's probably the best thing I could have done. It meant I had the car. So twice a week through the week when I was at uni, I would drive, finish at 5:15, finish at the Rickerton campus, jump in the car and go all the way down to Nuneaton to train. So I would turn up and it'd be pitch black in the middle of winter and you just have car lights and random street lights next to the track where we ran.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing fancy. But my coach would know if I was 5 or 10 minutes late, like it was unavoidable because of traffic. So he was pretty good about that. But I think the commitment I made then really paid off. Because like you mentioned, Sam, like I wasn't winning anything at school. I got the best I ever got in my last year at high school was like 3rd in the Scottish schools indoor 200 meters. And even then I was a second behind the girls that were 1st and 2nd. So I wasn't like a teenager. So I was very much a late developer. I always thought I was more of a, I don't know if I was necessarily a late developer body-wise, but at the age of 15, 16, I kind of definitely was quite tall and lanky. Like I'm only 5'6", 6.5", but like compared with some of the girls in the year, I was definitely kind of longer limbed. But yeah, as soon as I left high school and had the more freedom, I got a part-time job at Sainsbury's at the time, and then later on left that and worked at IKEA, and I'd work there like a Wednesday, Saturday, and then I'd have my kind of 5 days a week training, and I'd be working the 2 days that I didn't train, and it worked really well, and I'd have all my kind of studying. So I was one of these people that you'd have 8 weeks of uni, a week of revision, and then do your exams, and I never once had a resit. I think I just got in such a good routine.
Wow.
And yeah, just quite academic. I think I'd be like, all right, there's a computer lab, let's go and get that quiz done for like a biology module or stuff like that. And I would always find people that were at the uni, like, you know, to be study buddies with, so you'd end up doing the work together, I'd do it. And yeah, I was always good with keeping a diary, and I don't know if it just was quite an easy system for me to find, because it meant that, you know, you'd obviously have a lot of friends that were living at uni or whatever, and they wouldn't turn up to classes. I was always Miss Reliable. I'd always been at everything. So they were always like, what are your notes for this? And well, have you been there? Have you been that? And I think it was one of these things, I never felt too stressed at all. And I think that helped my training. It meant I had a good balance there. And also when it came to competing in the next again summer, so 2006, I had a real big breakthrough.
So is this 2006? You were still at uni then, were you, or was this?
Yeah,
just finished
I started 2005. So
okay, so September 05. So 06 was in the first year uni.
Yeah, so the first summer, like we finished the end of June for exams, so I was still in the semester, and we had 3 terms at that time actually instead of semesters. So you had your 4 modules per term, and then 3 sets of exams across the year. But yeah, I got my first like under 20 Scottish title. I won both the 100 and the 200, which was pretty cool. And that was at the old Scotstoun before they rebuilt it. And I remember Charlie was there at the time with another one of his close friends, and he was like, celebrate it after you win, because like, you know, he was convinced I was going to win. Like he was really confident. But I was like, you still have to go out and win it and run a heat and a final and so on. But I remember that was my first ever Scottish title, and then in the same afternoon I got 2 of them, and I was like, this is ridiculous, like this is amazing. And I went down to the British Championships and I got to the final in the English kind of equivalent, and I came 7th, and I thought, that's pretty cool. Like, you know, I've done that. I've been down
top 7 in Britain, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I had no idea about the rankings at that point. I think that's when the Power of 10 came out. It's like a website with all your rankings on it.
Okay, I think I stumbled across that when I was researching you actually, but I had no idea what it was.
So it's like a ranking list for everybody in the country where you like see where you're ranked. It's pretty cool. You can get a bit obsessed with it. I know as a youngster you'd be like, oh look, we're such and such, and
yeah.
So at the time I ran for a club called Harmony AC. They were based in Balerno. And they were a club that was pretty good for like up to under 20 level, but there wasn't any like competition opportunities for them after that. So I was at my first university competition, and I was 2nd in the 100 meters, and then I won the 200 meters. And I remember people from coaches like from different clubs coming up saying, "I would love you to come and join our club." And I'm like, didn't really know what it was all about, to be honest with you. I was a bit, oh cool, that's quite nice. Yeah. And my coach hadn't been there at the time. I remember it was match on my birthday I ran on, and I remember phoning him up and saying, "Oh, these guys have been in touch with me. What do you think?" And from all the coaches that spoke to me, it was a guy called Norman Gardner, who turned out to be Ailey Child's first coach. He was like, Treevy, you know, we've got the under 20 league. You get a chance to run in that. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. And at the time, the Edinburgh AC had so many athletes. I would be the person 4th. You know, I'd be that typical person that never got a chance to run.
Okay.
So those kind of summers, we joined Brachivi, did a couple of under-20 leagues that summer and the rest of the summer, and became quite friendly with Daily. Travelled across a couple of competitions, and she was showing me how to navigate, the different league matches that you had around the country. And I ran at Gateshead, and I remember breaking 25 seconds for the first time, the 200, and that was quite a cool thing to do. And yeah, I just loved it, being around. You'd kind of stay overnight, and then you'd race the next day, and then you'd travel back on the team bus that same day. And that's the first time I've been around people properly on teams. And that whole year, to win the Scottish title, winning both the sprints, meant I got my first Scotland selection at the end of that year. I weighed
So
down,
that's the first Scotland selection at 19 years old.
which is quite old, I think, as Scotland selection goes, because I'd missed out on Scottish schools. I hadn't been quick enough to get picked any time in high school. There's always like 5 or 6 girls ahead of me. So never did like all the big school events, like the schools internationals. There's like 2 or 3 of them at the time, the Celtic Games and different things. So yeah, for me to be that patient, when I think back, I must have been pretty determined to kind of keep improving myself. Because if you look at people nowadays, like a lot of people drop out at the age of like 18, 19, and they don't keep it going when they get to like university level. But I was the opposite. And I just loved the setup. And I think Charlie having the same things, the only thing in life that changed for me had been went to university. And again, like I used my free time to work, so I could always afford to get my fuel money back and forth to Nathan. So it turned out, had a couple of athletes in my running group. Like I was probably the best one in the group, but we'd all like help each other out in training. And again, still Charlie wouldn't tell me how fast I'd ran, and despite me getting quicker and quicker, I didn't know how quick. And then the following year, 2007, from 2005 to 2007, I took like a second and a half off my 200 time.
That's right. So you got the sub 25, and then you started gunning for sub 22.
Yeah, 24. Yeah, so I went from 25.5 down to 24.6 in a year, which is pretty ridiculous. And then went from 24.68 down to 24.18. Ran out in Sweden. I got picked for an international. I still remember where I was in this computer lab getting an email through saying you've been selected to run in Sweden. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Do you know what I love? The way you've described every single what to me is I believe the collective professional term is lost my shit. You have just been like, oh, that's cool. And it's so amazing because you've spoken so much about your determination and I've mentioned your passion, and you come across so not happy-go-lucky, but you are what will be, but I will make sure my damned hardest is going to be what I want it to be. But then you talk about your determination, things like that. I reckon you must have had this most like charming, lovely little like school face. It was like, "Hi, I'm Stacey, and nice to meet you. Lovely to shake your hand." And then I reckon just behind the eyes, it was like, "I will kill everybody to get this gold medal if I have to."
I think, I don't know if it's an athletics thing, but like as soon as you're on that start line, you can be as nice as you like to anybody out with it. And Charlie still say that to me. He's like, "Stop speaking to people. Like, don't just say hello to them. Like, go and just warm up. Like, be the one they want to be." But I was always so polite. I'd be like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And it'd be people you ran with in the relay team and stuff. But then it came to like races, and I remember going out to Sweden for the first time in 2007, and there's a couple of girls that ran for Edinburgh at the same time, and they were like, "How do you run so quick? Like, your warm up's different hours." And I was like, "Well, I train on grass. Like, this is new for me." And going out to Sweden, they've got this fancy track, like bouncy, like called Mondo. It's like the really fast Olympic surface.
Right.
And I was like, this is pretty cool. But, like I did my warm up inside. They had this fancy bit where you could run underneath the whole stand and all the stadium all the way around. And I remember climbing before the competition started all the way to the very top of the stadium to get that infamous picture looking down. And I didn't realize that it's the same stadium in Gothenburg that Michael Johnson had won the world title in '95. It's where Jonathan Edwards broke the triple jump world record that's still held today. Like all these famous athletes competed here. I had no idea what it was. I just thought, cool, this is the Gothenburg Youth Games. And I beat all the Edinburgh AC girls, which by rights I shouldn't have done. Like, they're training all these fancy facilities and got people to run against day in day out, whereas I was training my own with some young guys, rugby guys from Gala and stuff that would come up to run with me.
Yeah, and come to just do like sprint training or something, or like distance fatigue running,
I keep fit, and Charlie was very much like came from a boxing background, so I used a speedball and I would use circuit training. I would use like running on grass and all these different ways to strengthen me up, and it's mostly focused on technique and how you ran. But as soon as I ran on that fast surface with my spikes on and had never done it before, it was like a carpet, like running as fast as I could. And I had the cool spikes that Michael Johnson wore, the gold ones with the black, and I thought I'd made it. I was like, this is pretty cool. And I remember finishing the race going, wow, like I've just completely smashed my PB there, I think. I remember I had a little Scotland flag in my bag, and I remember a picture got taken. And some of the girls that I ran against, there's one girl I noticed yesterday, she ran in the 4x4 for Norway. Her name's Lisbeth Sletum, and she still runs meters. And I ran against her in that race, and I thought, both me and you are still competing. This is pretty cool. Pretty decent levels. So it's really funny to have met her years ago at that competition. She's still competing. So that one competition, that was my first memory of, wow, this is really cool. I really enjoy winning these. Like, to get a bronze medal, I think I was one of the only people to have got a medal out of the whole Scotland team. There's like 10 of us out there. It's like sprints and sprint hurdlers that were there. And we came 5th in the 4x1. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. I was on the 3rd leg, and I think I did myself justice, and it's pretty good. But doing the 100 meters on the Saturday and then the 200 on the Sunday, and it's just, it's one of these competitions. I've actually, not from that year, but I've actually got a medal that I got from this competition. This is one of my kind of special ones, and it's got Världsungdomsspelen, which means World Youth Games in Swedish, and it's got the Ullevi Stadium, and it's got in the back of it like the year and that. So I went back in 2008 again. Like, I went a couple of times, and I just loved it because it comes with like this big, like, bright lanyard, and it's a square medal. I've never came across many square medals. So I've got like a bronze from 2007 and 2008. We went back, and then I went back in 2011 and got a silver and a gold in 2 sprints. So
you got the whole set.
Yeah, it's a brilliant competition. It really set my kind of international career alight. I think that was one of my 3rd or 4th internationals, and I just knew that. I think I was very grateful to have had the chance to go there, but I knew that I was good enough now. But if that makes sense, I knew I wasn't the one that was always 4th. I was like, right, I'm winning medals now. Whatever we're doing, Charlie and I, it's working. And I just did what I was told. If he said me, this is what we're doing, I'd be like, yeah, cool, no problem. And I just knew that, like, his approach of less is more was a better idea. I think training sessions would be like a 6 by 150 meters. So you'd run from one corner of the football pitch, run down one corner, cut the corner a little bit, and then run down the far end, and that would be about 150 meters. Right. And you'd walk back and have a couple minutes rest and do it again. And that's probably the hardest training session I did with him. But I didn't need to train any harder than that. You maybe do 2 sets of 6, it would be the hardest session. And then ended up running 24-1 with him and 12 flat, which is, to have trained on grass, to find out years later that Usain Bolt was doing the same. He trained on grass quite a majority of his career, and I thought, there's something in this. So, yeah, that's pretty cool.
I love the thought of you looking at Charlie, your coach, and just be like, this guy might be onto something, actually. Like, that's amazing. I'm so you touched on it there. That was, would you say those games were your big eye-opening moment, like you sort of said there? It's like when you thought of Michael Johnson's run here, all these names like the triple jump world record, all these life-changing athletics events just start popping off in your brain. You're like, all these took place here. Like, this is where this happened, and now Stacey Downie is here. Was that when you were kind of like, I'm really gonna give this a proper go now?
I think, like, that way when you see something, and in the stadium, the thing that got me was you walked past the high jump mat and it had Gothenburg 2006 in it, where the European Championships had been.
All right.
And I think when I hit home, I was like, wait a minute, people who've been here, I watched this last year on TV. It just completely clicked. And then I was like, some of the older team members were like, oh yeah, I remember Michael Johnson competed here as well. And I was like, oh wow, like, this is the same stadium. And it's quite a well-renowned place to compete. And the stadium wasn't necessarily filled with lots and lots of spectators, but it was filled with quite a decent crowd of people competing, so maybe a couple of thousand. And you're running with having to get used to start commands in Swedish as well.
Oh, so yeah, of course. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so you're having to watch other races and think, like, what's that guy saying? Like, what is on your marks? What's get set? And also, what happens if it's a false start, or when they say, stand up, please? Or so you're trying to listen in to what's going on. And I remember one of the things you won, and this is really funny. Again, I think they're in my medal cabinet at my parents' house. But with green bunny rabbit ears was one of the presents I got given for being on the podium. And I was like, what's this to do with? And there's like a theme park up the road from the stadium that if you have your number from the youth games, you can go to the theme park. And I quite liked it. I was like, this is pretty cool. I need to go back to this at some point. I never was allowed really on the Scotland trips to go, but when I went myself with a teammate in 2011, I got to go to this funny themed theme park. So that was one of my weird things I got given for being on a race. So yeah, throughout my university career, I think I was pretty lucky. So even I went to that competition a couple of times, and it was my first time competing abroad to race. And I think I hit home. I was like, wait, now is this what the professionals do? And, I had was my Faithful Athletics Weekly that I used to get every week.
Mm-hmm.
There was not like social media wasn't up and about. You'd get your news from a newspaper. You'd get it from like websites and stuff. And I got again a couple of other Scottish international picks that kind of summer. It was like the under-23 international at Derby, and it was pretty cool to get named at all in the kind of Scottish athletics kind of review of the event. But when I got named above people like Ailey Child in that event, it was like I'd won the 200, the 100, the 4x1, and I'd won all my events. And I was named like as one of the kind of performances of the day. And it was ahead of her, who she'd already won her event. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, because I think she'd run for GB juniors at that point at Loughborough International. And 2007, again, I got picked to run at the Loughborough International, which is quite a big thing in the relay, the 4x1 relay. Running with people, in a team like Susan Deakin, who'd been on Commonwealth Games teams and World Championship teams, and she'd been multiple Scottish champion. So to be running and trying to pass the baton to her was very daunting. For that being quite a stressful experience compared with Sweden, which was quite a relaxed and chilled experience. My first time competing abroad. So it was, that summer I had like 3 or 4 international picks, which was, it was a brilliant year. 2007 was just one of these years that you think back and think that was just everything went to plan. And even 2008, I had a slight injury that I needed surgery for, so I couldn't quite perform as quick as I'd done in 2007. But I actually passed my results, bizarrely enough. So when I was under 23 for the first time, I went down to Bedford, and I'd come 7th year before in English champs. And this time around, I came 2nd in under 23. So I was like, this is pretty cool.
Wow.
Child at the time, my friend and a girl called Sylvia Camia, they'd both done really well on the 400 hurdles. And I've got this picture of us next to the stadium with my medal. And I'm thinking, this is pretty good going, to get a silver amongst all the English girls, the Welsh girls. I obviously must be doing pretty well. So 2008, I had high hopes, right? I'm going to go in and I need to win this now. I've won everything you could have done in Scotland. So I won the under 23 double again, the 100, 200. And I went and competed for the first time in the Scottish seniors. And I actually ran against, I've got this cool picture to show Sam.
I love that you brought props as well. This is amazing.
I know, I've got loads of things here. So this picture here from the Scotsman, hopefully you can see without the reflection.
That's all right.
I'm 3'10", that's me over there with my short haircut, and Christina Hurugu was in the middle.
Okay, a famous name everybody will know.
Yeah, and I didn't realise Christine had been, at this point, wasn't allowed to compete for a year after the World Championships or Common Games, I think, in 2006, because of she missed 3 drugs tests. And at the time, I didn't know much about it, but she turned up to run at Scotstoun, and she turned up on my 200 metre heat on the Sunday, and I thought, oh well, somebody to go for. So I ran against her in the 200 metres, and she won it in 23.8 something, and I was 3rd in 24.08 or 24.09 windy, and that's one of my quickest ever times, regardless of age. That was one of my best performances. And that picture, it looks like we're all in a line. 20 or 30 metres to the line, and we're not far off it. But I just remember looking at my face and thinking, cricky, I really wanted to beat her. And after that race, she went on to Osaka and won it. She was the world champion. Yeah. She went off to Beijing the year after and was Olympic champion. I was thinking, what? I just ran against.
Yeah, I was not far behind you, and now you're at the Olympics.
So it was amazing, and even the top Scottish athletes. So even Susan there, I was like, right, I want to be beating Susan, because it turned out it was one of her last ever races. I think that was her last race before she retired, and she'd been somebody I really looked up to for performances wise to try and beat. But unfortunately, I was half a metre behind her. It wasn't going to happen. But that summer was a bolt from the blue. Actually, thinking back, I also ran against Jessica Ennis at a race across in Grangemouth. It's called the Celtic Cup, and it was on TV. Sky Sports had picked it up. And you had Lee McConnell was in it, and I was on the development team for Scotland. So you had your 8 athletes, and 4 of them were juniors and 4 of them were seniors. and I came fourth. I beat people that went on to the Commie Games in 2010, like Amy Foster for Northern Ireland, and I wasn't far behind Jessica Ennis. I think she ran 23.5 and I was 24.1. And I thought, not far behind you. And then she went off to Osaka and got a medal. And it's these sort of moments that you kind of forget, like they're the top of their game at that point. So I was very much, I didn't really want to fill in a line, if that makes sense. I wanted to have a good performance and show I deserved to be there.
Yeah, you weren't there just to make up the numbers. You're like, this is as much my competition as it is yours.
No, definitely. And I think like championships wise, I think I'm like a championship performer, because my dad was looking through some medals. He's like, I think about 2/3 of your medals are gold. I don't think you like losing, Stacey. I was like, well, maybe it's just opportunities I've taken, but it's about
give yourself some credit. There's no such thing as taking opportunities. There's earning medals. You don't, like, nobody says you win a medal, you earn a medal.
Oh yeah, you've got to turn up and compete. And so I think one of my defining moments, so I was to pick any for my career, it's probably been that first Scottish titles when I was like under 20, is definitely up there. Competing across in Sweden, being like my first international abroad, was a pretty cool one. But one of my favourite ever medals is this one. So and my dad is probably unhappy I've taken it from the cabinet, because he always likes to get them. But I've got this one, and it's to win an English athletics medal is pretty cool. But I was a bit of an unexpected winner. So like I said, I'd had a bit of an injury that's winter that I needed some bit of surgery for. And turns out that, go down to the British champs. I'd organised my hotel and done everything as I thought. We turned up in Bedford, and it turned out my hotel booking was wrong. And that I booked it for the wrong month. It was May I booked it for. I'm like, oh dear. Okay. So if you've got a room for the night, great. So we've got a room for tonight, but not for tomorrow. But here's another hotel you could go to. I was like, oh, phew, right, solved that problem. So got in the 100-meter final. I think I was 5th, and I remember saying to my coach Charlie, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic. I think this race tomorrow, I could do pretty well. And if it's the same sort of girls, I think I'm going to be up there trying to push to win it this time. So I wasn't allowed any pudding. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere near the sweet treats. I had to stick to my mains and healthy diet, because if you're too full, he always believes that you're too full or too heavy, or even if you drank too much water, that it's just going to sit there. You need to be the right hydration and not eat the right thing, keep it simple. So I went out and did the heat, and I remember finishing. I came second, and I was like, I don't feel very good. It's like, what's wrong with me here? Like, I think it was that hot down in Bedford it was very windy as well, though. I was like, I don't feel very good. My mum's like, oh, maybe you need to get your nice lolly to try and rehydrate you a wee bit. So I just don't think I was maybe feeling 100%. Well, somehow, I don't know what happened in the final. I remember walking around with Charlie beforehand, and he was like, yeah, if God wants you to win it, you're going to win it. And I'm not particularly religious, but I always believe that, like you say, you've got you take the opportunity and make it something.
Yeah.
And this is a race I often watch back in a bit of disbelief, to be honest, because I wasn't as great a shape as I should have been the year before. So I didn't have that natural confidence going into it as like I'm the fastest on paper. I probably wasn't. I think I was maybe 3rd or 4th on times that year. But as soon as the gun went, I was like, wait, this is mine. Like, tunnel vision definitely happened down the home straight. And I only won it by like 0.1, 0.2 of a second. And I beat probably the girl who's a favourite. I beat the girl who beat me in the heat as well. And yeah, it's pretty special. It's my only like kind of global medal in the UK. Like, you have to be up there when you're a junior to be winning this is like the pinnacle. Right. But again, it's under 23s, and like I'd won all the Scottish ones. And I kept winning my university.
That's under 23s 200 meters gold.
So yeah, like it's pretty cool to be in 2008. I remember the write up. It was like, and Stacey won a surprise gold. And I was like, well, I did, yeah. I took advantage of it.
How condescending. Stacey Downie earned that gold.
No, exactly. So like at the time I was like, well, I'm still improving. And I was with Charlie. Like I think for me, like I don't know if it's kind of sunk into me how many gold medals I won with him, but it was something like under 20 golds, under 23 golds, but like consecutive years. I won like 4 years in a row, consecutive gold for under 23 and under 20. And the universities, apart from 1 silver, I won like 7 golds and 1 silver. And that's pretty, like, when I think back, I was thinking I was pretty dominant, but I didn't realise how dominant. Not until you go, oh, wait, now what year was that one? Oh, right, okay. And at the time, I just took it as, well, I've done that last year, so I should be matching it or doing better. So it came to after that competition, and that one's quite defining for me, because after that, I remember a couple of days later, I'd been in touch with local papers and stuff. But Charlie went to me, like, I'm sorry, Stacey, I don't know if I could take you much further in the sport. I think I've got you to where I can get you. It might be better for you now to train with other girls who are, competing day in, day out and doing this sort of thing. So at that point, he was put me in touch with Edinburgh Athletic Club and said, you know, maybe you should train with the coaches there, and work with Bill Walker, who'd worked with Alan Wells, and he'd had obviously some great success with him in the 80s. And so it was quite a weird one for me to be in my last year at uni.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had all this change. So uni changed from terms to semesters. I was doing my dissertation. I was at home a lot of the time. And I'd lost this massive support in my life.
Yeah.
Somebody that he was really somebody that went above and beyond. So he actually helped me get some funding when I was 2021 from this private sponsor that allowed Charlie and I to use it for expenses for training and for traveling to competitions and things like that. So it meant that Charlie could come down to Bedford with me for the British Championships. But yeah, it's one of the most amazing moments and pictures I've got is him and I with this medal, and a couple of days later he's saying, sorry, I can't coach you anymore. And I just thought, whoa, like that was pretty hard. And I remember going into my next competition, my heart wasn't in it. Because I'd always want to phone Charlie afterwards and be like, oh, look, this is how I've done, like pretty happy. And it was a different thing completely. So university life for me, like my athletics was really, really good. And I think having those kind of 3 years of doing really well, but that last year at uni was a bit of a struggle because I was like, oh, okay, so I've got to my 4th year at uni is probably a bit more worth more than my, say, 5th, 6th year at high school. So how on earth am I going to do this? So from traveling down to see him all the time to now commuting from one side of town to the other to Meadowbank. So my life completely changed where I trained, and obviously how often I trained as well. So Charlie being really good at keeping and holding me back, I think. So I didn't train 400 meters at this point. I was very much 100, 200.
Oh, so you holding you back as in like keeping you grounded?
A wee bit, but also like athletics wise, like allowing me to go in there and win everything. So I think at 16 he said that I was good enough to go and win,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't make a statement. I might have got beat by a couple of girls. He just wanted me to go in there and smash it and show, like I have been training away, but I have been here the whole time, but people haven't heard of me because there's not a club I train with. It's I'm training on grass, and it's quite common in the Borders, I think, to have a couple of runners that are from places that you don't have anywhere to train, whereas it's quite common for people in cities to have clubs they find to work with, and you'd find other athletes to train with and stuff. So yeah, I used to train on my own quite a lot with Charlie. Sometimes it'd just be him and I, or another athlete and him, but just the confidence he gave me was just second to none. That's probably why I kept winning everything. As soon as a championship came, especially if he was there, but often he wasn't there either, but if he was there, I always usually won more times than I lost.
Wow.
So
what a man as well. Like that change must have been so, so I assume that was your final year of uni, so you're just finishing uni. So you're finishing education, you're losing your coach who's been there for close to 10 years at that point, more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it was like 12, 13, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I had one more year of uni to go actually.
Right.
But it was a tough one. I did all my exams, and I still kind of like shake my head and go, God, he just got me as an athlete. But like you say, he'd worked with me for so long that he knew exactly how to work with me. He trained me as a person. He didn't train me for the sport. He trained the way that I worked and why I ticked. So he knew that, like you were saying about the silliness behind the friendliness.
Yeah.
For me to be focused, he had to get me to shut off and not speak to people.
And
focus entirely on all my energies in this one thing. And as soon as the gun went, the performance came, and I can really see why he's like, you need to be selfish. You need to focus on what you're doing. You've got to be organized. And he really instilled that kind of discipline of always be early for things, always be organized the night before, always make sure your spikes are tight and done all that before you get there. Lay out your clothes the night before. And it was just really good practice for sport, because it's the same thing as life, isn't it? Like laying your clothes out the night before means you're more prepared, and be in touch, like find out how long it's going to take you to get to the venue and all that sort of stuff. So he often used to pick me up and take me through. So when I ran at the Celtic Cup in 2007, he let my parents make their own way, but he drove me through so that I could be focused completely on my race, because it's a big deal. It's international. It's on TV. It's a huge deal. So to lose that person who, he was like a third parent, really.
That's like you said. You were seeing him when you were seeing your actual parents at some point.
Yeah, and I think he probably got to know the real me as a teenager as well, because like I don't think you can hide in sport. Athletics, you can't. So like of course there was times when things didn't go so well, and Like I had a back issue, I've still got it today. Like it's a kind of pelvis issue where I've got to wear orthotics for it, and he helped me work out what was going on with that. And of course, when you get a sore back and you're running and you're not feeling 100% and you don't really know where your power's coming from. Like I'd been a gymnastic kind of freak when I was younger. I used to love it all the time and do vaulting and stuff. I was probably overly mobile in certain parts of my back. So to be a sprinter when you're needing everything rigid to work, it was the total opposite. So he took me through to specialists to see what was going on with my back when I was 16 and got me orthotics. And that's probably why I didn't do so well when I was younger in my teen years. Could be because I was growing so quick and I hadn't quite developed. But yeah, I'm really grateful for him for putting all that time and effort in. And when I look back, like that upbringing in the sport, like it didn't matter what time I ran in training because whatever, like it's like setting a limitation on yourself. He always said that if I told you what you ran, you would think that's all you're worth. Whereas if you don't know what you're running, you just run. You know what it's like to run. And I think his feeling was compete in the Highland Games as well as the track stuff. So you learn how to race. So you're not racing for a time, you're actually racing for a position. And I still think that's given me an advantage that maybe not a lot of athletes have. Because leaving that kind of setup to go to the Edinburgh EC group with Bill Walker, like it went from you could train up to 6 days a week if you wanted. And the training was totally different. Instead of it being maybe 2 days running, day off, like 2 days running, and then you maybe have 2 or 3 days in a row, but never like 4 or 5, to like what professionals would probably have done, like having circuit training and runs in the same session. Then the next day, you do 4 runs. Then another day, you're going to do like short sprints. And then another day is going to be the same as Monday, but it will be a different type of running session. And Friday, you get off, but then Saturday's is hard session. And Sunday would be hill training. So some of it was similar, but the intensity which you trained was far harder and higher. So in my last year at uni, I had the balance of, well, I've been working at IKEA at this point. I'm going to have to maybe cut that back or work every second week or something. So having to juggle that and also do my dissertation, but also train in this new group, which is a bit odd. And had my first winter with that group. So I really believe like Charlie's training helped me because I still kept improving. I still ran for Scotland, but then the end of 2008, I got my first Scottish title. So just a couple of weeks after leaving Charlie and moving groups, I won my first Scottish title senior. And then the next year I won it again and ran a quicker time. So I really believe like my competitiveness, I still kept improving, even though I had this change in my setup. And then obviously seeing what the professionals did. But then training on grass all my life and then going on the track all the time didn't really play well with my body, unfortunately. So 2010.
That's like, even because not to make this about me, but like, so my reference for that and what my listeners might understand more is the difference between a grass pitch and an artificial pitch in rugby. And you talk to any rugby player or professional athlete, the difference on that, and like even your lower, like I used to say all the time, like getting tackled on it hurts because it's not grass. But every player would walk off clutching their lower back and like the bottom of their glutes, where it's all the shock absorbs come through.
Yeah.
So I completely get what you mean by the difference between the track and the grass.
Because it's just like every track's different as well, and it's maybe I was lucky that Meadowbank, the old kind of track, had a really quite nice soft bouncy track on the inside. Then outside it was slightly harder, but to be running in the special spike shoes that I wear all the time on that, your calves and your legs just take an absolute hit. So 2009 was a pretty good year, but then 2010 I ended up with like sciatica and I couldn't get rid of it the whole year. And at that point it was like, well, maybe we need to change your orthotics. And I was really lucky to have found a physio in Edinburgh who could actually look at it and be like, right, I know exactly what to do with you. And then 2011, so I was always really a 1-2 runner up to that point.
Right.
And Bill Walker was like, well, I think you're pretty good you could be pretty good at 400. And at 2009 at the end of the
season, when he made, sorry to interrupt you, when you made that decision to go from 1 to 200, 1 and 2 to 2 and 4, were you finding already the success was coming more in the 200 and the 100 was almost like your warm up into the race weekend or the race meet?
Yeah, so my 100 meters when I was younger, like under 16, was probably my better event.
Right.
For the amount of training I'd done. But from 16 onwards, I was definitely more of a 200 meter runner. So although I was winning like the 100 meters at like Scottish under 20s, under 23s, I was running pretty decent times, but they weren't like shattering for 12 flat or at that point 12.0 is what I'd ran. That's nothing special when it comes down to England because you were needing to run 11.5. Whereas in the 200, like I could run a flying 100 and add it on to the 12 flat and be running 24-1. So I was running better the longer I went. So all the training Charlie did with the 150s, I think, has helped, because
Yeah.
I won the 150 in the race and like, oh, it's fine. I've just got 50 to go, and it was fine, But I remember I was funded by the athlete sport program in Peebles at the time. It just started up in 2008, and I remember going to meet with them and chat about my goals. And I remember Bill at this point saying, I think you could be pretty good at 400. Have you ever tried it? And I'm like, nope. Like, 400 meters is something I don't think anybody wants to try. You look at it and go, that looks pretty hard. That's a long way. That's a full lap. And I think I'd done like maybe 4x1 relays. I'd done all the kind of sprint events, 60 meters, 200 meters indoors, but I'd stayed well away from the 400. But being the kind of runner I was, like, I have got a really long stride, so it would, the natural progression would have been to give, the 400 a try. So I competed out in Belgium in an international meet in July of 2009, and competed in a place called Urdegum, which is quite a famous place to go now at the end of May for fast times. But at the time we got taken out there was a meeting in July, and they said, there is other meetings. They're called the Flanders Cup, and if you want to come back, you can maybe try other events. So I'd really enjoyed this trip, and I thought, okay. So another meet a couple of weeks later, and there was one for a 300 meters. I remember Bill saying, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Why don't you go and try the 200 and 300, go out to Belgium, give it a go, and see how you get on. And this is me just finishing uni as well. So it was kind of, nice to kind of have, got my 2-1 in my degree, really chuffed for that. I thought a little bit of time to celebrate, go out there and see how I get on.
You are the only person that picks a 200-meter international event as a way to celebrate finishing uni.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the same in that way to other people. I think a meal with my family was like the only thing I remember celebrating, to be honest. Never been much for drinking or anything like that. So, my celebration was always meal, cinema, or traveling if I could get it. So, I was at this point, I think, social media was becoming a bit bigger. Facebook had been around, although I don't know if I had it at that point. But I remember, getting quite familiar with looking up for where races were and finding all these places. So I turned up and arrived in Brussels, got onto a bus, ended up to the Brussels station, then got the train to go and meet this random family who I was staying with, who happened to, their daughter was doing the meet as well as a long jumper, and turns up at the house, and it turns out one of the top long jumpers in the world, at that point she hadn't won anything, was Brittany Reese, was staying in the same house as these runners. And I'm thinking, wait the now, like, I've never met somebody that slept so much. All she did was sleep, and I guess the jet lag must have happened. But even the day of the meet, she's getting up, getting her breakfast, and going back to sleep. And I was just quite impressed at
what.
I just thought it'd be a bit rude if I did that. Like, I need to focus on my competition and take it all in. But she'd watched, I think the London Diamond League was on, and we're watching the TV the night before the meet, and she was watching all the competition, and she was using this competition as a pre-meet for her to go into Berlin that same summer. So she goes out and jumps like 675, like a massive jump for the competition. I go out there and break 40 seconds for the 300, which is a pretty decent mark, 39.50. It's actually still my PB for the 300. I've not done it very much. So I got my kind of first inklings in, wow, like I know what lactic feels like. I feel quite sick. And, put the foot down. I thought, I'm sure I could have ran it harder at the start there. Like I really enjoyed that, but wow, that was different. And to be around somebody like her who then went on to win everything you could win in the sport, but multiple years, indoor, outdoor, jumping amazing championship records and stuff. And to meet her and be at the same competition, and just opportunities from when I left university, and I had kind of 2009, I was still improving. I thought, well, I'm 22, like she's 24, and she's a professional competing around the world. And it was just quite amazing to be around that kind of athlete. And the best, I always felt I was a 200 meter runner. Charlie thought the same. But Bill was like, I think you've got a lot of potential in the 400. I think you could show a lot here and actually, like do some damage, like in the Scottish scene, but also internationally. And being honest, I don't think I ever completely believed him. I don't think I quite believed if I could ever run the 400. And I don't know if it's a mind versus matter thing. But I think because like 2010 was quite a good year for me, but I didn't like improve my times or anything like that. Had quite consistent runs, but like I say, I got sciatica and got injured and wasn't as great as I'd hoped. So my first proper year into 400 meter running wasn't great. Like I'd hoped to go in there and smash good times. And at the end of 2009, I'd run a few and I went absolutely tanking off. And came the last 150 with a huge elephant on my back and finished in a complete state, but ran a massive personal best of like 56.5 at the time, which was a pretty good time for like a 22-year-old. And I thought, whoa, is that what a 400 meter feels like? You know, I've got a long way to go because I had no idea how to run this event.
I was going to say, you didn't know how to run the race. You were still running 200s effectively, almost.
Pretty much, yeah. Because I ran one the week before, and it's like, yeah, just go through in about 28 seconds and just see how you get on the second 200. And I was like, yeah, I went through in 28 and then ran 29. That's 57. That's a bit slow. Like I've got a lot more speed in my tank. I should really be going out a lot harder. So I went out a lot harder the next race and then paid for it. So yeah, like training for the 400 meters is again very hard. So to run the extra distance, you need the extra distance in your legs. So 2010, the plan had been to move up gradually over the next couple of years. 2010 got the sciatica turned out my back. Just didn't. I think it was the track again. I hadn't quite adjusted to the full training, but at this point, I was committed to the full-time training that Bill had set for me, and it would be 6 days a week. But every day had running it.
And so you didn't really get to rest it or recover it either.
No, so you had one day off, like a Friday, but the conditioning was from the running rather than proper gym work or anything like that. So it'd be circuit training based. But as the year went on, you would change the running to different things. And I would sometimes go in the grass just to save my legs a little bit if they were feeling funny. But his idea was, right, okay, if you want to try to aim for, the 2010 Commie Games was the aim at that point. Unfortunately, that year with the injury didn't really, having the sciatica, it was a bit of a known one. At the time, I didn't know how to get rid of it or anything. I've since learned how to do it now, but at the time, I was like, I don't have a clue how to get rid of this injury, and I used to wear just bare feet in my spikes, and I didn't have any socks on or anything. So from that point onwards, I changed the spike I wore to a bit more supportive spike, and I wore orthotics in them, trying to help my back, and it paid dividends because that next year in 2011, I was actually leading the UK rankings in April at one point. I think I was first in like the first weekend in April, which is pretty cool because I don't think anyone else had raced at that point, but I'd smashed my personal best and I had a huge breakthrough, and I thought, well, I've trained really hard this year, but it's been from the training like a 300 meter runner. I didn't quite do the full 400 meter training, but I trained kind of almost like 3/4 of it so that I could gradually build it in over the next couple of years. And that's a really good decision, I think, that Bill made, because it meant that I got used to running 400s, but I still was doing my sprints. I was still doing 100, 200. And, smashed my personal best, got under 24 seconds, 23.8, pretty decent mark from lane one. And in the same race, you had a girl, Margaret Adoye, that got the Olympic qualifier, and she got off to London 2012 next year. And I beat a girl in that race who had been at Olympics in 2008 in the 4x4. So to be beaten by hundredths of a second somebody that's been to Olympics, and ahead of me, it was two girls. One of them was going to Olympics, and then the girl, Louise Bloor, she went to Rio as well in 2016. Yeah. So I was surrounded by Olympians. So I didn't realise how good I actually was at that point to be putting those performances out. And I smashed a couple of 400s out just for fun and ran 54.8. I smashed like a couple of seconds off my PB, and I was putting times down that were pretty good, but again, my 200 meter speed is what got me round. I remember finishing the 400 feeling a bit sick, as most people do. And that was just a turning point. I thought, okay, well, I've put the hard work in and training. The race is the easy part. And I kind of used that season to introduce. I had my 5 kind of races across the 400s and got used to them. And again, 2012 was meant to be the year to push on again, and unfortunately picked up an ankle tear. So it's been a bit like amazing playing sailing for the last 4 or 5 years, and then all of a sudden doing amazing, and then, sorry, a bit too much there, I need to come back a bit. And it was really frustrating, I have to say. Looking back, I'm thinking, this 400 meter training malarkey is not easy. And it's obviously my body is used to less is more, and it wasn't easy, even though I was working like full time, like doing like an admin job just to kind of support my running, and had some local funding for like physio and stuff like that with the athlete support program. Like, I realised that I was doing a job that was kind of helping my running, but it wasn't career-wise what I probably would want to do in the long term.
Yeah.
So having those kind of like zigzag years, I could easily have dropped out the sport. I think, having had the success I'd had, like, in 2011, I'm running against Lee McConnell, and she's winning the Scottish title, and I'm second, and around 23.8 behind her, and she's 23.4 or 23.5 or something. I was beating her on the bend that's coming up on her shoulder. So next year, you can't run because you've got crippling pain in your back or your foot's not quite strong enough. And it's like, and the injury prevention part of running, I think for running as much as I did, hindsight's a great thing, but I probably shouldn't have done as much as I did because I didn't do that with Charlie. So, trying to change, it's good to change one thing at a time rather than
you've kind of gone from far left and far right in a non-political term. You've gone complete opposite swing.
So you're doing far more than what you used to do, and of course it's the type of shoes you run in as well. You might not be able to train.
So how you've touched nicely on a point here in this, like it might get a bit emotional for you because it's clear just in the tone of your voice how that affected you. But the way I've always looked at the Olympics, and then when I had Ryan Owens on, a track cyclist, he said you are doing what can sometimes be not even a 4-year cycle. You can be doing an 8-year cycle that is coming down to, in your case, so say the 20 odd seconds for the 200 or the 50 odd seconds for the 400, and that is it's like the cliches they always say. It's like you're doing hundreds of days worth of work for this one day of success, and you are even shorter than that. I'm doing years worth of work for a minute. It is all coming down to this 1 minute. So then to even have these situations with the injuries, how do these take a toll, and what do you have to say to yourself to, like you say, not just give up on the sport and go like this, because it'd be very easy for somebody not with the mental fortitude that we spoke about to go, sack this, I'm not working my ass off for something like this to happen. This is, like you said to yourself, you were very academically inclined. As you literally just said there before I teed up this question, you could have just gone, I know I could be doing something much better than doing this admin job that I'm doing purely to fund my running. So how does the brain work when these situations go? So can you tell me a very quick way to sum up the training when you're on the high, like you were said on the roller coaster, and then tell me how the brain reacts when you get that injury and you miss the 2012 year doesn't happen that you'd worked for?
It's tough because I think at that point, like I don't know if people have this in sport or in life generally, but I remember kind of like just thinking to myself, like, where's my life going? If I don't have sport, I've done this job to help support my sport. Like, what happens if I don't have my sport? I remember thinking and seeing like other teammates do far better than what I had done. I remember seeing Ailey Child getting picked for the 2012 Olympics. I'd seen people go to the 2010 Commie Games in Delhi, and I was like, wait, now, like I could have been there. Like I could have been closer to what they were doing, like in 2010, say. And it just, I think something deep down inside me was a bit. I think maybe Charlie's influence helped here. I think knowing that, like, to get selected, you need to run a time. But for me, if I wasn't at my best, I should be running the time regardless. Whoever I run it, I should be running a good enough performance to qualify for something like that. And we're talking margins here of small things. Like I'm running 23.8. Like the Olympic standard was 23.3.
So half a second. Yeah.
Much, but at the time, like I was ranked 17th in the UK, and I kind of was like, this is pretty cool. And I remember being like I was obsessed with my sport that year, and everything went right. But I think it's because I made it. I made sure everything went right. So I'd be like going to the physio once a month for preventative work on my back or whatever. Any exercises they gave me, I did them. My warm-up was the exact same every day, so that it came to a competition, I was chilled out. I listened to my coach and got his advice and took advice going into the 400 meters and how to run it. And I remember that year in 2011 that it was quite a significant couple of moments that happened that were out with the sport. There was a girl in our group that actually unfortunately died in a plane crash.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
I remember, thanks. I remember at the time we were all pretty like, you couldn't believe it, but it was her and her brother both died in the same crash, and she was training to be a pilot. And Carly was somebody in our group that she'd been seriously ill, and to even be thinking about being a pilot was a massive deal, and to even go and do that. So I remember like running halfway through the seasons, I'd ran my big PBs in that June, and I found out that she'd passed away, and it hit me really hard. To go into my next 400 meter race, and Bill was like, right, you need to go out hard and go for it. But I just held back slightly. I was too emotional still to really fully get that out of my system. So I think in 2012, when I got the the injury. And I think it was my first race of the season. I tore like my ATFL ligament in my ankle. And I remember thinking, wow, this day was freezing. I've like done this ankle injury. It wasn't until the end of the season that I actually got back to the shape I should have been in.
Right.
I remember in the Olympics thinking, well, like I'm only 23, 24 at this point. I've got plenty of time, but I'm going to have to think, like, what am I doing as well as running? Like, I can't just, I've always been, like you're saying, like, I've always enjoyed, like, school and university, but I need something else to get my kind of head around. Otherwise, it's going to be quite hard for me just working in a job to support my running for the next 10 years.
So you needed that other stimulant as well. Okay.
And I think I'd seen, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do. I'd applied for different masters in like sports nutrition, and thought about going to Brunel University. I thought, like, where do I go for academics and for sport? I very much looked everywhere around the UK to see what would be the best fit. And then I discovered that teaching, they actually paid for it for you. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool.
That must have been a nice change to have something where somebody pays for something for you.
Yeah, and like your fees are paid for you, and you don't have to worry about it. I was like, oh, happy days. And my uni lecturer had said, if you want as a reference, or even Mrs. Hunter asked her for a reference at People's High, and went in 2011, did some volunteer work and got to see the PE department. I thought, is this for me? And then I applied, and I was one of only 26 people to get in the postgrad, which is out of over 150 applicants or something like that. So we were, the lucky chosen few. And again, because I'd had the injury in 2012, I was thinking, well, it meant I had something else to think about. So I went back and did my postgrad. And I don't know how I managed to do this, but somehow managed to still train whilst doing a postgraduate teaching degree, which is in 10 months' time, is like squeezed in 3 placements, having to train. Like, some of the times I'd have to train on my days off, like on a Friday, because I couldn't quite train through the week. And
this is all while rehabbing an injury as well.
Yeah, I'm just very lucky that I'd got a very good physio that could help me rehab that injury. So I was back training within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Rather than a couple of months that might have happened. So getting it immobilized and then the tear completely healed, and it was just a case of strengthening the foot back up, was actually an okay injury to have had. Hamstring or something else might have taken longer.
So how long traditionally is your AFL tear? How long is that if you were to do, I don't know what the word, but conventional sit out time would be?
So I was I think I'd had the same injury in 2009. I was out for 12 weeks and I'd ruptured it because I hurt it. This one was definitely
never a nice experience to hear something in your own body pop.
No, not at all. This was very much a grade 1, so it was quite limited time to heal. And I was just lucky that I was always quite adamant if I had anything you looked at, whether it's a sports massage I needed, or if it was a physio appointment or something, or whether I needed a quieter night at training, I would try and adapt to suit. So I learned the hard way over the years with training with Bill, and again, that you can't be pushing yourself in every single training session. You need to kind of run at 90%, so you've always got that reserve. So when I was trying to work full time and train full time, I was picking up colds, I was getting ill, I wasn't maybe resting as well as I could have done. And then when doing my teaching degree, it's understandable that I had to put that first to get through it first and foremost. But I knew if I had those 2 years, doing that plus my probation year, that I'd then be qualified, and that would give me that to fall back on. So it very much was a case of, I knew the Commonwealth Games were coming up in 2014, and I knew that my teaching degree, I'd be finished, and I'd have a chance to kind of aim at that. And yeah, unfortunately, didn't quite run the time that was needed to run there. At that point, I kind of moved back towards 1s and 2s to try and get my speed back that I'd kind of lost. I was just looking for some consistency, because in athletics, you do need 3 good years in a row to try and improve and build on. And as I said, my early 5 years, my career went great. Having a zigzag up and down, and it was really tough to manage full-time work and also training at the level you needed to be able to get picked. And it's all small margins. If you're put in perspective, the time I needed to run at the Commonwealth Games is only 0.25 quicker than my PB. That's nothing. That's one good race on a sunny day.
That's so. If you don't mind me asking, this is a very personal question, but so when you missed out on that Commonwealth Games, like you said, it was a matter of margins, the 0.25 seconds. Does your brain, because my this is the only way I can even try to understand how you feel in this situation, is to put myself in your shoes, and my brain would immediately gone back and gone, what would have happened if I hadn't just done the 2 years placement and What did you did your brain go that way, or were you just thinking well, there's nothing I can do about it now, so what's the next target?
Yeah, I guess like looking at the 4-year cycles. Like I knew when I was 16, I wrote this big list of everything that I wanted to achieve in the sport, and it was
Right.
like run for GB. It was win a Scottish title. It was win my Scottish title again, like regain it. Not just win it once in a year. It was things like run a certain time. Another one on the top of the list was run at the Commonwealth Games. It
Right.
was I want to be at the top of my sport. So I kind of timed it that 2011 I had a great year and I was trying to apply for teaching at that point, but I didn't get in that year, so I had to kind of wait until 2012. So I only found out the February 2012 I'd got in. So I was looking at other opportunities, like for instance going to Camp America or doing like these kind of sport camps in the summer. But I'd had the injury in 2012, so I thought I may as well use the time off
Yeah.
to really fully heal and then go and enjoy my life a little bit as well and get a bit more of a worldly experience and come back and be fresher for it. So yeah, I never went to Camp America because I found out I got my space in teaching. So I had the choice of going out there and missing the first 2 weeks of my course, or and being the kind of studious person I am, I thought I better not miss anything. I better be here for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of tried to time it so that I'd be fine for the 2014 games. So 2013, I kind of came in some good form again, went down to the British unis, came 5th in the final, did pretty well. To get to the final at the British universities is pretty hard going anyway. It's quite an early competition. And yeah, thought I'd timed it well. I found going back to university a bit of a struggle. And Bill and I at that point, we kind of fell out actually. He
Right.
didn't really support what I was doing going back to university, and even though I was saying it's about the timing of it, I'm trying to time it so that I'm fresh and fine to go. We kind of fell out, and the university was wanting to support me to use their performance gym, and I thought that'd be a good idea to use it. So I worked with a guy who'd been head of Scottish athletics at one point, a guy called Nigel Hetherington.
Right. I
Trained,
recognise. I've heard that name before. So.
yeah, he'd been at Scottish athletics and gave me my first international, and he'd seen my progress, and you could tell that something had happened in 2012. I'd kind of fell off and I hadn't performed how I should have done. And he got in touch with me and said, like, what's going on with you? You should be progressing. And he'd seen me with Charlie and the limited facilities I'd had and training on grass. And he was really supportive and said, look, I can help you focus a bit more and work on a program to help get you back. So 2013, I had a pretty good year, pretty good indoor season. Went outdoors and I was the university captain for like the international. So I'd won the kind of the 100 and the 200 there, and I kind of stuck more to FOBA ones, but I was still doing FOBA fours for a bit of fun. And then ended up, thinking that Nigel would be the person to try and help me go from 2013 into 2014, and then the qualifying period was like similar to this year, like the middle of June. And I don't know if I just didn't respond to the same way I should have done for the training, but it didn't quite work for me the way that other trainings had worked. With Charlie, like everything seemed to work, and with Bill, most of it worked pretty well. But yeah, I got too heavy. We tried to do weight training, it just didn't suit me, and ended up kind of putting on a bit of weight, which is not ideal in a sprint event. You don't want to be carrying that down the track, and didn't really get injured or anything. It just training wise, it just didn't suit. So the February 2014, at the same time, Nigel got a bit ill actually, and at that point I didn't have a coach, so I went back to Bill at the club and said, look, can I join in with sessions for you because I'm training on my own? And at that point I kind of knew it would be quite tough to get the work behind me at this point. You need to have done it for at least 6 months before to get in that chance to kind of get there. So yeah, unfortunately 2014, the summer, didn't quite pan out the way I wanted, and I'm watching in the stadium in Hampden, amazing event, watching the events, and I'm thinking, should have been here.
It really should have been me, yeah.
And it's heartbreaking thinking home games as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking there.
So the one thing that not a lot of people know about me actually though is because like I knew when by the time kind of I had a backup plan that if I didn't get to qualify, I thought I need to be involved in this Commonwealth Games somehow. So I kind of went to an audition and auditioned to be in the opening ceremony for the Commonwealth Games.
All right, okay.
I'll commit to this if I don't get picked as an athlete. And I knew kind of, having come back from the form I was in 2011, I wasn't quite there. And I thought I need to be at that form and pushing on. And I'm only running comparatively like 24-3 or something. So So I'm half a second off where I need to be. So I committed to that summer to compete. But at the same point, I was going along on my summer holidays when I was off uni and finished that to go and do all the rehearsals. So I was in that very cheesy opening sketch of the Commonwealth Games with the tea cake.
Oh, really?
I didn't throw a tea cake or do that. I was a barrel slinger or something. But it was just an amazing thing to be part of. And the thrill of when the crowd cheered.
Yeah.
The fact this hasn't gone to plan for me as an athlete, like I need to take something from this. And the fact that the crowd's cheering, like it gave me it made me feel as if I was an athlete there. The disappointment.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of atmosphere, like I still got like, I can still think of it now. Like, even when I watch the video of it now, I still get like hair raised up in my arms because it was such an amazing thing to have been part of and something to really channel my energy into. And then, from there I thought, right, okay, next Commonwealth Games, I am going to be there. This is me, and it kind of meant that, I still remember 2014. I knew I kind of wasn't in the greatest shape I should have been, but now I've got my teaching degree, and then obviously trying to find a job. Life takes over. You're trying to find a job. I'm still training, but I'm not able to focus on that 100% until I got my first kind of teaching post in the start of 2016 up in South Morningside Primary in Edinburgh. And that was the best thing that could happen for me. So I can drive in from West London and get into work, go straight from work to the track then home, and then I've got a good routine going. So it meant that 2016 unfortunately picked up another injury, and this is
and that would have been Rio, obviously.
So yeah, I kind of feel like Olympic years. I'm like, what is going on here? Because I'd been at 2008 Olympic trials, been at 2012 Olympic trials. I went to 2016 Olympic trials, but ended up with a calf injury and I'm icing my calf. That was my kind of reward for going down to Birmingham. I remember being in this hotel room on my own, feeling miserable. My parents hadn't come down with me that year. I was on my own and I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is not good enough. Like, I'm 28, 29 now. Like, this dream of mine is slipping away. I need to kind of make a go of it. And I got this notebook from Waterstones with lots of gold dots in the front, just like a notebook you could write in. And I just started doodling in it, and I just did the doodle for like the 2017 kind of season. I was like, right, I wrote a few notes. I did the 2018 Gold Coast logo, and I thought, well, what do I need to do to be the top athlete? And I wrote a massive list of everything. From that point, I really took it upon myself to like make it as best as possible for me to try and qualify for the next one, and have the best work-life balance I could, so that I could, make it to the next game, and I'd be in my prime really. But I don't know about you, I've not heard of many teachers, Sam, who have made it in athletics and still competing and doing all this. And athletics is not a sport that you typically hear. Oh yeah, you hear about that person, they're also this as well.
Yeah.
Like, if it's quite an active job. So yeah, it was always going to be one of these things that's got a very good routine, good holidays, but it's through the day and through the week. You're going to be tiring yourself out to then go and have to be on your feet all day to then go and train. And to even like be going into races and being, fully fit, I made the commitment there. I was like, well, I've dabbled with this in the past. I've not quite had the luck I've needed to really give the 400 a go. Yeah. But for me, in this Commonwealth Games team, my best chance is to try and aim at this 4x4 relay spot and to try and get an individual 400 metre time and give myself the best chance going. And I knew that I needed to get as quick as I could over the 100 and the 200 to help my 400. So yeah, 2017 was a mini project really. I'd kind of put in everything I could have done.
So you almost made a 1 year all or nothing video, like an all or nothing mentality.
Yeah. Wow. I was kind of like, well, I've been around this for a while now. Like, I know how I run, but it was things like you take for granted, like nutrition. Yeah. I would look at, I put on
school canteens aren't the most nutritious places.
No, exactly. So you're going for like, what am I eating at lunch? What am I eating after school? When am I eating? And I was really considering that and looking at that in more detail. Things like, I'm asthmatic. Do I change my asthma inhaler so that it's actually better for me? Do I get my whole asthma review to see whether I need to have a special tablet to help because I'm training in the cold? And turned out my asthma was exercise induced. And I'd go to races sometimes and I'd feel horrendous whilst I'm running a 200. I'm like, I'm running indoors. There's no wind here. There's no cold. So I'd do all this kind of things behind the scenes. It'd be things like going to get my podiatrist, get that checked every 6 months just to see if my feet any adjustment or anything needed to done in the orthotics I've got, or physio would be once a month I'd go again. But I'd make sure that my training was as consistent as it could have been. Like my sleep pattern was better. And I met I think a large part of me being so kind of organized and structured was having the support around me. So mum and dad were still like around there and kind of coming to the competitions. But it was my kind of partner Callum that I met in May 2016. He was like he had a kind of recreational running. He's from Glasgow. He wasn't really like he'd come and watch all the events at the Kelvin Hall and stuff. He enjoyed athletics, but he'd never been around like a proper athlete. And for him to kind of meet me and telling him about my story and stuff, he was really behind me. And I think a large part of why I did so well in 2016, 17, like, it's unheard of people to still be improving in their 30s. In Scotland, there was nobody at my age still competing. There's Ailey Child, who was UK funded. There was a couple of other athletes on the guys' side, but there wasn't many females at this point. A lot of them had dropped off throughout their 20s. A lot of my friends had gone, and so I'm now kind of competing, trying to, be like a professional athlete without all the funding. I'm having to work full time to do it, and I'm using all my kind of holidays to then either train abroad to get the sun, or I'm planning competitions. So I was one of these people that's like, I'm pretty meticulous. Like I like to have everything planned out months in advance. So when it comes to the time, if you need to adjust things like your race plan or things like that, athletics is a tough one anyway. So you need to keep it as simple as possible, and you need everything to be in, all your eggs need to be in that basket. So you need to have a coaching team that's around you. You need to have training partners to help you. You need to have like somebody you can see as a physio if you need that, or a massage therapist if it's after races to try and flush your legs out. You need to work at like nutrition wise. Are you the one that's going to be feeding yourself? I've got my parents are great to kind of share that kind of load with me. And it's just about your work-life balance. What are you doing on your days off? So mum and dad were good at keeping me grounded, and I'd stay at home. I was back at home at that point, and it was really good for me because it meant I could just focus on going to work, do my job, go training, come home, and some nights of the week the food would already be cooked for me, or other nights I'd have to cook my own stuff, and it was fine. And it meant that was taken care of, and that was an our box ticked, and that support was like day in, day out. They know how good I'd been when I was younger. But when it came to the actual summer, like to do a team sport, and maybe the comparison between team sport and maybe myself and athletics is like I wouldn't start the season and be like in the best shape, but you'd have to race throughout the season, maybe similar for games with team. But like you're doing it on your own. You've got nowhere to hide. Like my time is my performance, like it'll show. But in training, I'll be like putting all the work in, and all you're running for is like 20 seconds. So mum and dad would come down to British Championships. I'm running a 200 meters and 100 meters. That's like 35 seconds of combined time. And you're training all that year to run at the biggest competition, and try to succeed and to try and get through. So having them still motivate me, even though things got difficult and picked up with all these annoying injuries, to then come back and then have this year and like almost everything went to plan. So at that kind of time, I was training, 5-6 days a week. I had, 3 or 4 days of just running different ways, like whether it was like tempo running or on the track, or whether it was tempo running on grass, or whether it was hill running. But you still had all the circuits, which, as you know, they're brutal. They're not easy. And an hour worth of circuits with cheesy like radio in the background was what I had. So, like you'd be training, and the 30 seconds of like your actual like session. You're in 40 seconds, but you're doing that 15 exercises. You're doing that 3 times. You'd end up with your pecs. You'd be so sore from doing press ups. But it is put in. So I remember I put all that effort in, and I always was quite aware that I needed to be at the right weight to compete. No one's ever said to me, "Oh, you're looking heavy," or I've never had that throughout my career, which I'm quite grateful for. But I always knew at my best I used to race about 61, 62 kilos. I thought if I'm too heavy or too light, I'm not going to perform well. So it was just things like that made you aware of like the basics. If you don't sleep and eat right, there's no way you can perform well. And it turned out like this kind of newfound kind of competitiveness. I thought, well, if I'm going to get in this Commonwealth Games team, I've got this whole year to try and perform. I just broke it up and competed around the UK, went off to Belgium, competed in that Erdegem meet I'd done years ago. And every time I raced, my time kept coming down. But instead of just sticking with my kind of comfortable events, which I'd always enjoyed, like the 200 meters, I thought, right, I'm going for the 400 now.
Yeah.
And I'm going from 56 seconds, 56.7 or something the first race. I got my PB down to 53.9 by the end of July. And in my race, that's it's a big chunk to take off the time. And the girl in my race that won it, she ran like 53.4 at times. A girl called Jessie Knight that's out at the World Championships just now.
Right.
The 4 hurdles. So I was amongst top girls in Britain running really well with them. And at the same race, I had Marilyn Okoro was in my race. I beat her. She was in one of her last races before retiring. I was looking, going, wow, like when I perform my best, like I'm really up there and I've got a good chance. So I went into the Scottish Championships that year thinking, right, I've got enough in the tank here. I just need to win this. And I've got a chance of getting on that plane for Australia. I remember turning up to the competition being absolutely knackered. I'd raced so much that year that mentally I was kind of done. But
wow.
I just turned up and I thought, right, I need to win this. Come on, Stacey, let's go for it. I just had nothing in the tank when I left the blocks.
You're just physically done before you even got to the race.
I just had done too many races, and yeah, it was difficult because I think like I was putting everything I could have done, but I don't think my coach was like quite on the same page as me. He was like, "Yeah, we need to race all the time every weekend," and I'm like, "No, like if I race all the time, I'm going to be tired." Like, so yeah, I learned the hard way that you can't do. You sometimes doing less is more, and having less races. But I think I put myself under quite a bit of pressure that year because I was like, right, come on. But it was always going to come because I put the work in.
Yeah.
But I came so close. So turned out the top 4 in the rankings got picked. I was 5th. And the girl that beat me at Scottish Champs was 0.3 of a second faster than me. And she got to go to the Common Games and I missed out.
And that was 2018.
So yeah, heard in like December 2017, the team had been picked. And I put an appeal in and said, look, just to say, what's going on. You've named people in the relay team that are actually slower than me. What's going on? But they've only got a certain quota of spaces. So they have to take athletes that are already qualified. So there was people in the 800 and the heptathlon that were already there.
Right,
so
okay.
Got to go. And I'm at home watching, basically. So, but yeah, that's when I decided, right, I need to make a trip of this and try and get out of my system. And I went over to compete at the Still Gift again. I'd done that when I was 17. I went and competed again. I thought, may as well make it a holiday. And we went up and watched the Commie Games and saw some family when I was up there. And it just made the journey kind of feel complete, that I gave everything I could have done. And, I didn't expect when I was way back 16, 17, did I think I'd still be competing in my early 30s? I don't know. Never thought about it. But, I was at my best. It was PBing at 30, which is, a lot of the athletes I'd raced against had done that in their early 20s. So, yeah, I kind of think to myself, like, I probably did the best thing I could have done, like going back to uni and getting a postgrad at that point. But I do kind of think, what would have happened if I just kept training and waited a bit longer?
That's such a tough decision, because you weren't just looking, like we said at the very start, you were looking after Stacey Downie, the athlete, but you were also very aware of Stacey Downie, the person, which nobody will ever fault you for and go, oh, you should have done this, this, and this, because hindsight's always been the best advice in the world, and there's only one right decision at the time. And as you say now, you have many memories from teachers. But like, we spent 20 minutes talking about a school that it turns out we were both at in this, and we're almost fairly concerned we were there at the same year for 1 year, and we didn't actually know each other, which is wild. But I've said this before, so many times already, and I don't want people to get sick or think I'm trying to blow smoke up somebody's arse because they're on my podcast. But the mental fortitude, and not only that, but the happiness you still you give off, because it's not an act. You're not portraying an act. You are a wonderfully happy and smiley person. Is so inspiring. This is 4 years ago now, 2018, and I'm still here rooting for you from you just telling me this story, which is amazing. And it really pains me to then go, can we talk about the next Commonwealth Games? But so this one was quite different in a way of, there was a global pandemic, which has not been seen for the like of hundreds of years. But so, not to make you delve into this awful, really strange therapy session this has delved into for the past half an hour, which I'm not qualified to talk to somebody else. But the COVID years, so can you tell us what happened with selection for what would be this year's Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, COVID was a nightmare. Yeah, it's funny at the time. I think I just took it for granted. Like, I was at school. We heard gyms are being shut, tracks being shut, schools are going to be shut. I'm thinking, whoa, okay. And after the 2018 cycle, I was feeling really heartbroken, being honest. At that point, I'd been a sports psychologist years before when I was like
Right.
maybe 21, 22. And when I first moved from Charlie, I was struggling to kind of fill the void that he'd had in my life. And at this point, I was struggling.
Because like you said, he was almost a psychologist as well as a coach
Oh,
because
yeah.
of your age. Yeah.
I don't think you'd ever need to see a sports psychologist if you had a person like Charlie. Like, he was that kind of person that you could speak to anything about. Like, even if I had a problem with school, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, cool, I could help you with that," or he'd just give you the common sense answer you needed to hear that kept things straight, or he'd tell you not to worry about something silly. And as a teenage girl, having that kind of reassurance from someone, oh cool, that's pretty. If he's saying that to me, he's been around a bit, like he's
Yeah.
60s at that point. So yeah, having that kind of void, like, how do you fill that person that's been there for you for everything? And I think part of me still, like, that void will never be filled, I don't think. But I knew that, his dream and my dream had been, I was good enough to go to the Commonwealth Games. I always felt, okay, well, I owe this to him and the journey that we started years ago, that I'm going to give it a go. And I thought after 2018, I was like, could I really do this again? And it's always coincided that every time that I've had a Commonwealth game year I've missed out on, my next year after it's been an absolute killer year. Like, I've went for it. And it's because of what
you're almost off cycle by a year.
Yeah, it's all about timing. And I think something like might not go my way, or it might be like a multitude of events, like an injury, for instance, or illness. But when COVID hit, oh my word, like, from going from teaching, which in itself can be quite stressful, having it, I'm lucky that I got a contract. I was full time for a year, but I went back to my kind of reduced contract of 3 days. And I thought, right, for me to be making it and running, I can, live with my mum and dad, save up some money, and I can have 3 days training alongside my work. And I've got loads of free time outside of that, and that's going to really help. So 2018, lost faith in the kind of working relationship I had with Charlie, and also with Bill. At that point, I'm thinking, look, it's not quite went to plan. What's going on here? And decided that I needed to make a move. And I thought, there's nobody in my training group that's really taking it as seriously as I am. I need to be around people that are actually taking it seriously. So I got in touch with a coach who was actually based in Aberdeen, a guy called Eddie McKenna, who had, funnily enough, Charlie had coached him years ago. And it's all coming full circle. And I knew that he had a couple of people in his group. There was one girl who was funded or had been winning medals, and she was running a couple of seconds quicker than what I was. And there were some other athletes in the group that were pretty good. I thought, I've got nothing to lose here. I may as well get in contact with them and say, I know I live down here and you live up there, but is there any advice you can give me about, would you distance coach me, for instance, if I could just get on with the work here? And I don't think it's really done in sprinting, to be honest. I don't think it's done with many distance runners, but it's certainly easier to do with a distance runner than it is a sprinter, because the technical side isn't as important with a distance runner. And luckily he agreed to say, yeah, let's give it a go. We'll wait, because I contacted him that summer and he said, why about we try and meet up at the end of the summer in like the August time, September, and set a plan out. And I decided at that point, that void, I could really feel that kind of, I needed some support in that way. And I actually got in touch with my old coach, Charlie. I said, look, can you help me train for this New Year sprint, which was like 3-4 months away. And I'd had a calf issue that whole summer. So this calf issue had came up in 2016. It's came up in 2018. I'm going, what the hell's wrong with this calf? Like, why is it still being a problem now? Surely it's a strength thing. I need to get this sorted. And it turned out it was an Achilles issue. And I got a scan done. I was at the English Championships, and turned out the reason why I ran so poorly, I could barely run on my calf, was because I'd probably torn it. And also there's like a tendinopathy, like a swelling with the Achilles tendon. So luckily got an ultrasound, got told, yeah, you need to stop running. You need to let this go. So I had this new motivation of, well, I'd done some border games again. My calf had been an issue that whole summer after the kind of commie games kind of cycle. I thought, right, I need to give myself a kick here and get on with it. Got my ankle fixed, got my calf fixed. And at that point, I was running in trainers a lot. I couldn't train a lot in spikes whilst it was healing. And Charlie was really supportive of that and said, well, I've got a couple of runners doing the New Year sprint as well. They're doing some rugby fitness. They're with me. You're welcome to come and join them. So, of course, I'm training myself at that point. And, Eddie was kind of supportive of me running with other people at that point to try and help me get back into some confidence back with my running as well. Because at that point you're thinking, well, I can't, my PBs from 2017, I PB'd in 2011 before that. I did 6 years of not quite PBing or being the best. So I'm going, right, okay, 2018, I'm going to really go for it. And then this will be a springboard, hopefully. Did my best in that year. We had no idea COVID was going to come. So, everyone's living freely. I was training up in Achievey at the point because it made sense for me to drive up there. Did really well at New Year's Sprint when Charlie had helped me. I kept that going into indoors. Ran my quickest time in 10 years over a 60 metres, which is pretty ridiculous. To be run within 100th of my PB, and I'm training on my own. And all I've done is change the way of how I train. So instead of training and running all the time, I was going to the gym on a Monday, doing lots of calf strengthening work and kind of body exercises that would help, like step ups and so on.
Yeah.
On a Tuesday, then gym again Wednesday, running again Thursday, day off Friday, so an active recovery day, then running again Saturday, and then my full day off Sunday. And the routine really helps. That was my typical week with working with the new group. And the way it worked was I'd maybe once a month or every 3 weeks drive up to Aberdeen, train with them, and then come back down the road. And I still felt part of a group. I felt part of, my own journey, really. But I knew that, I was quite determined that I was going to train as hard as I could to try and show my full potential, because I was like, I can't miss out again. 0.3 of a second is nothing.
Yeah.
If it wasn't me, it was going to be somebody else. So, I don't want to be in that position ever again. So I need to really work at this.
So was this almost one of the first times you were running? Not, I would say you were running in anger almost. Yeah.
I was really annoyed. Yeah, I think I was so happy at putting everything into that season. I think what I was more annoyed about was I didn't fully feel I had the right support, like when it came to race planning and things like that. Right. I think I was more angry at things. My ducks hadn't lined up in a row. I put everything in. I got 9 out of 10 things right, but to get picked, I needed that 10th thing right.
Yeah, and you were just almost trying to find. You were looking for, because you couldn't put a point on what was the thing that didn't go, but you were trying to find that.
So I just thought, like I'd worked with Bill for quite a while by this point. I thought I needed something to change. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, the reason why these athletes up there are doing so well is maybe Eddie's input. So I thought, give it a try, and it won't do any harm to try something new, that's for sure. I think, a bit like the kind of academic side, having that new thing to focus on helped.
Yeah.
It gave me a purpose. I felt, okay, I'm part of something. And we'd speak on the phone once a week, and he was quite busy working, which again, my previous coaches had both been retired, so they had a lot more time to speak to you and free time and time to see you at training and so on. Whereas now I'm going from my boyfriend helping support me at the running sessions 2-3 times a week, and I'm in the gym myself, just doing the sessions as I should be, or teaching myself how to do things. And I met a really good friend in the gym, a friend called Hannah, who noticed both her and I were the only 2 people wanting to try and use the lifting platforms. And I'm there doing my calf raises, and she's there doing all her exercises. So, I thought it's going to be quite a lonely sport. And I think meeting all these new people at the gym and being aware of, like if I want to get back running, I need my calf completely sorted and strong. So I ended up speaking to her, and then obviously had a good indoor season, made it to the British Championships indoors, had quite a good, my quickest times for a long time, the 200 indoors and the 60, and then came outdoors. And in the April time, that's typically by this point you're kind of thinking about early season openers. And I decided to hold off for a month. I thought I'm just going to be a bit slower to open up my races. I think I'll wait to the start of May. Okay. And at the same point, I'm trying to still teach. This is the busiest term for me. So I've got sports day, I've got report writing due, I've got PE students if they're there on a placement, I've got loads of different things going on. And I'm also deciding, my first race is just going to be a midweek one after work. This is a great idea. But I'd put so much consistent training together that my first race was my fastest ever opener. Came out and ran like 55.6 and thought that was pretty good. And I ran a 150 beforehand, which is not really a race that's done very often. I ran a big PB in that as well. I thought, this is pretty good. Had a couple of races, a couple of weeks' time, and I ended up with my first Scotland selection. I'd had one in 2017, but this time in 2019, it's my first ever 400-metre selection. So for committing to this other distance, finally things are going right for me. Finally, everything's going where it should be. I turn up to Loughborough. I have a massive season's best in the 400. From 54.9, I get down to 54.4. My second quickest time ever. I'm like, this is brilliant. I've got a kind of run of form here. I get told, you're in the 4x4, you're the last leg now. You're going to be up against the quick folk. And I thought, oh wow, okay. But now not only have I got my first individual selection, now the quickest in the team, and now you're going for it and putting the baton. And it's one of my favourite ever races. And I remember my parents were there to watch along with Callum, and I given the baton. I must have been about 30, 40 metres down on the leader, and about 20 metres down on the girl in front of me. And I just got the baton. I must have forgot what race I was doing because I went tanking off, caught the girl in front of me by the 200-metre mark and right up behind her. Get to 250 and I start to feel a bit blurry because I think I'd went out that hard. The lactic must have hit a bit harder than I'd thought. Got down to about the last home straight, and we were both catching the girl in front, and the crowd on the balcony is going absolutely wild, and I'm kind of going for it. And at this point, I can't really see where I'm going because I'm that tired that I veer from like lane 2 out into lane 4, bizarrely. And there's this really funny series of pictures of me falling over the line, trying to climb the line to try and catch this girl in second. I missed her by that. I don't know how, but I ended up with like one of the quickest splits of the whole relay. I was like 54.1 I got given her. I think some people thought I was just under 54 seconds. My PB was 53.9, so I've ran a PB split
in a relay,
having ran a 400 early in the day. So that whole summer I was like, wow, like if that's how you do a 400 meters, like I've somehow sussed this out. This is the event for me now.
Yeah. You just have to accept the mild blurry vision at the final 100.
Yeah, and like I think as well, like training on my own, I'm thinking, what the heck? I'm doing this running on my own. Yeah. I don't have anyone to pace me. I'm running against me and my shadow, and I've got Callum barking at me, going like, "You've only got 2 minutes left, recovery." And anyone who's done like any team sport knows that it's always easier having folk around you.
Yeah, there's motivation there. Yeah.
Yeah, and having somebody to beat in training. So having like faster athletes is a no-brainer. I was just really lucky. There was a couple of groups up there that occasionally, if my boyfriend was busy and couldn't get across from work, that one of the coaches there would support me and time my rep to see how fast I was. So I ended up making a few kind of connections there. And throughout the summer, I just kept kind of improving. Had a good couple of races across in Belgium, 2 days back to back. Went into the British Championships and Scottish Championships and all the kind of big season championships at the end of the year. And I actually got picked to run for Scotland again in Manchester in 2019. And this is one I had to ask for a day off of school. I had to message and be like, really sorry, it's the first week back, but I've been selected to run for Scotland. Any chance that I can miss the in-service day and I can make this day up in our time or whatever? And he's like, oh no, don't worry about it. Like, that's fine. You go. Nobody gets PE like the first week anyway back, because it's a short week. So you just do your planning, no problem. So I ended up going down there, and I've been picked for a really bizarre set of events. So I was picked for the 400, then the 200, then the 4x1. So I was going longest to shortest of the order of events, and I was like, "Is that right? Was I meant to be picked for a 4x1? Do you not mean a 4x4?"
Yeah, like, you almost phoned somebody to be like, "Have I got the wrong sheet?" I was like, would you conventionally do it the other way around? So you'd start shorter distances and go to the longer instead of long to short.
It's just it's like it's always typical. Like sprinters always start like shorter distances and like go longer throughout like the day. Like timetables always that short sprints are on first. But bizarrely, like the way the timetable was, I was one of the first events. I was on at 7:00 at night, and I was the first event. So I'm in a team meeting and just going up to the team meeting. Alan Scott, the kind of team manager, was like, "Would you like to be team captain today?" And I'm like, "Huh? What? Me? Like really?" And I'm looking around the room, and you've got people like Steph Reed in the team, who's a Paralympic like medalist. And she was competing in our team. I'm looking at her. I was like, should she not be the captain? Like, looking in the room, and she's achieved more in sport than I have. And he's like, no, Stacey, I'd like you to do it. So it was a pole vaulter, Jack Storrs, who'd been at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Right. And it was me as the female captain. And I was just like honoured to be asked. I was just like, okay, this ups the ante slightly. Got the 400, I've got the 200, I've got 3 events to get through. It's quite a lot in one evening. Ran my 400, had a quite a decent time, like 55 flat, but I was only 3rd or 4th. I wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And it was like every race I kind of did better, but it was horrendous conditions, torrential rain, having to hide under the side of Manchester Arena whilst the 200s were postponed because you couldn't see the track. We had to wait for 15, 20 minutes and try not to get too cold. So I ended up just missing a medal in that. I was 4th, but like with the smallest of margins. And it came to the 4x1, and I was in the warm-up area. I was getting a bit of cramp. I thought, right, I need to watch this. I've still got 4x1 to do. So I was on the last leg, and I thought, this is the glory leg. Why did they put me here? Like, I'm better on a bend. Because at some time in my career, I think I've done every single leg for Scotland, first, second, third, fourth, depends who else is on the team.
Okay.
So in the fourth leg, and luckily the cramp went away. I mean, I held on and we got a silver. And I just thought, this has paid dividends. Like I feel like I need, a medal to kind of finish the season with. So I went from that week. It was a really busy week. Got picked for Manchester on the Wednesday, Scottish champs are on the Saturday, Sunday following that. Turns up the Saturday to find out that there wasn't quite enough people for a 400-metre heat. So warm up, then go home again, and then come out the next day. I thought, I might do the double today. I kind of fancy my chances. I've had one less run than I thought I was going to do. I'm going to turn up for the 200 as well. So I won my 200-metre heat quite comfortably in 24.6 or something. I thought, that was good. That was a good warm up for the 4. Went out and won the 400. So it was my first ever 400-metre title, indoor, outdoor. It was just amazing that my whole year had been built up to win this. And came out in the 200-metre final a couple of hours later. My legs were gone, but I'm trying to hide it from my competitors that my legs were done. Came out the blocks and I thought, I don't think I've got it today. But I just put the foot down and just thought I'll do my best. And I came third. And I ran a season's best that day, 24.4. So I was pretty chuffed at not having
That's not bad for somebody that thinks they've got nothing in their legs.
Yeah, so obviously all that training on my own and obviously getting back the rehab, I was so meticulous with everything I did that year. Even every race I'd have a massage after it and so on. Like I pretty much lived my life how I thought a professional athlete should be living it. And
you were a pro athlete on the non-funded budget.
Yeah. So throughout my whole career, apart from the Tweeddale Sports Council who funded me really, generously for travel out with the region, I've not had any funding since I was 21. I had that private sponsor, but then I've had nothing. So I've been self-funding my whole career. So I think a large part of my decisions have been, right, okay, how can I get enough money to support my training? Or, I've got to, be an adult and I can't rely on my parents for absolutely everything. I've got to go and do my thing as well. And it's just, it's not easy. I think I really would encourage youngsters to kind of think about if they really want to get down and be a professional in sport. You've got to kind of plan your path and you need to really think, because it's a shame to think money is a limiting factor in a lot of people's careers, or injury, for instance, or not getting the right support from the right people around them. Environment's so key. So I think with COVID, that hit another kettle of fish. So that year had been amazing. I couldn't have done much more. I went down to British Championships the week after the Scottish Championships, and I thought I was done mentally and physically. Went down there and ran one of my quickest ever times for the year, and ran my quickest ever time, the 200 at the British Champs, and had a great competition. And it was the last one at the Alexander Stadium before they stopped, tore it down for the Commonwealth Games. I finished off my season at a relay championships for Edinburgh AC where we won the 4x1. And I went to Pitlochry Highland Games and I won the 90 and the 200 metres, and we picked up Charlie and took him up for the day out. So it was coming full circle. It's like I'd achieved my dreams that year.
Yeah.
But I'd had my very first coach Charlie involved. I've had Eddie involved. I've had this new setup which I've put together, which for the most part worked pretty well. And then went into that winter, and then March time hit. I'm about to start competing in April, May time, and to be told you can't go on the track. We're outdoors.
Yeah.
Why can you not compete? I just found it bizarre. But there was 3 months where I don't think anybody could access anything. Then there was only elite sports people, and it wasn't until
did you constitute as the elite sport?
Nope.
No, which is baffling as a GB athlete that you don't constitute as elite sport.
No, so you have to be on funding to count. So regardless of me winning medals in the past or being a Scottish champion or an internationalist, to be considered funded, you need to be on institute funding, which was maybe you were a couple of percent within or beside the Commonwealth Games standard. So if I'd been say 0.1 of a second quicker, I might have been considered when I was younger, that sort of thing.
So how did your life change there? In terms of the sheer just a day, because you've gone from 6 day a week workouts, or 6 day a week workouts, six times a week workout, to you were in the same boat as all of us, where at some point it was you're not allowed outside, to you've got an hour a day, make the most of it.
Oh yeah, I found it really difficult. I needed a routine, so I think I thought the best thing I can do is keep my training days the same, and whatever day I was doing this on, just adapt. So local parks became my friends. When your hour exercising was that, I'd be right, I'm going off to a local park. I'm going to go and run there. and just find a gap. Because, as soon as the good weather started, everybody's in the park,
Everybody was there. Yeah.
because nowhere else was open. And then by the time you could finally get back onto a track, I was like, brilliant, okay. This is somewhere I need to get back. And again, I'm probably not the only athlete in this boat, but I know in Scotland, especially down in England and Wales, they allowed you access a lot sooner than they did up here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing on social media people getting access a lot earlier than what I'd done. I'm thinking, okay, well, what's happening up here? Surely we deserve the same thing. COVID surely is something that we're all living with. Is there not all a way for us to live with this and to, see how, because athletics is mostly an outdoor sport. It's the summer, right? So what's the problem? So it was, trying to find different training venues for me. I was training on hills, on a hilly road. I was training in local parks. Found this track at Dalkeith eventually, July,
Mm-hmm.
August time of that year, when I realised it was open. It was an actual place you could go train. It wasn't easy. And I guess having nothing to train for was the hard bit.
I suppose, yeah, as well, because everything stopped competition-wise as well. So you'd gone from... So in my understanding, you've gone from almost... So at this point in 2019, you're just turning 30, aren't you?
Yes, I was 30.
Yes, you've just passed you've just joined and entered your 30s. So you've gone from the age of 13, where you've had this competition's the goal, this competition's the goal, this is the next target, and because that's 20 years, that's 2 decades of what you're working towards. So you've now been told you've not got access to anything you're doing, you don't know what you're doing for, and there's no here's the big picture.
No.
Did it feel in a weird way when you then got to the play park and you kind of looked around and you went, it's not too dissimilar to Leiden Rovers football pitch? Was there a little bit of not the full circle moment, but you're like, I kind of like the familiarity of this?
Yeah, I think because I'd trained on grass a lot before, I was like, oh, this is fine. Yeah, I still have my long pins somewhere. I'll just change my spikes. I put long pins in. And actually, like, the only bit that, a couple of body parts took a while to adjust, like hamstrings and stuff. But again, it felt very much like back in the days of, right, let's try and find the best bit of grass to run on that's got the least holes.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel much different. And I think, I've always been quite self-motivated, I think, because I had that year of training on my own, and then, that next winter, like, we explored other people to run with, and I think that was the next stage. Had COVID not hit, I would have probably had some athletes around me to help push me on a bit more, so I would have had the same setup but pushed on a bit more with other athletes. Unfortunately, I didn't quite get a chance to have a go, so I feel like I've done the best I could 2018-19, get back in a great shape, had a really good winter 2019, didn't quite get to show it in 2020, and then when things started to open up again, everybody's kind of at that point where nobody knows how fit anybody is, and it's like some folk wanted to compete, some folk didn't. And the end of 2020, I was out. I kind of got to the point of, well, I need to get some more cardio behind me. If I want to run better in a 100, the thing missing for me, being asthmatic, I need to try and push it a bit harder, or even just some short runs that are like 5 minutes long or something. So near my parents' house, there's a really nice hill. You can run up and it flattens out. And I thought, right, I'm just going to keep trying every couple of days to try and beat how far I get on this in a certain time, or I'm going to try and keep running this route. It was the same route I'd done as a kid. I thought, I'm just going to go back to this. It seemed to work at the time. And I'd run there and to see how far it took. And my target was like, I'm going to get to that corner in 2 minutes 15, because that's about half a mile away. I thought 250 on the roads for an 800 is not bad. It was just a rough estimate. And I remember doing that. And I remember with September came in 2020, and I was like, came home from work. I'm out running, and I had to jump into the grass verge really quickly because a car was coming. I hadn't seen me. I was wearing bright colours. And I stood up. I could barely stand up. And I looked down at my foot, and I thought, oh. And I ruptured all ligaments in my foot. I didn't know this at the time, but I could barely walk, and I'm trying to hobble home.
And this was late 2020?
Yeah, and nobody knows this. I've not told anyone I had that injury, apart from my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So having that injury, I couldn't walk properly. I was on crutches for 3 months. I couldn't barely jog. So there's me trying to head and hands going, what the hell was I doing going out running when it was getting slightly dark? I should have just waited till the morning. And yeah, getting that injury, I could only start properly jogging on Christmas Eve of 2020. And then I was back running in March in Spike in 2021.
So you missed the whole of the warm up into the season again.
So 6 months worth of just trying to walk properly. So I think this is why it makes, having COVID, I kind of look back and think, what was I doing? I was trying to keep fit, but I was also trying to push on, and I was in really good shape. It's just such a shame that happened. COVID, I think, has been a blessing in disguise. It's allowed me to have more of a life balance, which was nice at the time. But yeah, I suppose that could have happened to anybody going over on your ankle. But it's just, I look back and thinking, because it's just like since then, like for me to get back in shape since that injury, I've worked so hard to get fit for this year. And for the first time ever, I've won the 400 indoors. And I kept setting myself new targets. And this medal here, like, is my last Scottish title. And I thought, this means even more than any of the other ones, because nobody knows what I've had to overcome just to get back on the start line, let alone be competitive. And then it turns out, I made a bit of history with winning that one. I thought, COVID's not going to take away, like, my running. Like, I've lost a couple of years worth of racing here. And I didn't realise at the time until I looked at some of my results. I thought, well, wait, now I've actually now won every sprint you could win indoors. So yeah, thinking back to like what the events were, like you could win in Scotland, so indoors you could win the 60, the 200 or the 400. So since 2011, I'd won the 60 and the 200 away back in 2009 or something. But then I've now added the 400 in 2022. So I've had like...
So you've got all three of the indoors.
So I've won them all indoors at various points, plus the relay indoors a couple of times. And then outdoors, that 400 outdoors in 2019. Plus, I've now matched that with the 2022 indoor one. I've now won the 100, the 200, and the 400 outdoors, which apparently nobody had done.
So you've won every single Scottish medal that you can win.
Yeah. And I didn't know this at the time. I was just literally wanting to run in that 400, try and push for confident, for a time for the commies, thinking it get as quick as possibly can. And then I ran 2 indoor personal bests and I've then won that gold. And I thought, wow. Like to run that in, February, the COVID also postponed a lot of competitions. So my chance to run a 400 had to be put back about 3 weeks because the class to 400 meters is an event that involved like contact. Because you have two laps.
Because you merge lanes, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So they thought there was a risk that people might catch COVID of each other. And, well, fair enough. So all the 400 metres, the 800 metres and distance events were held separately on a Friday night through in Glasgow. And I went through to the Emirates that week, tried the track out and, worked on a few race plans and then went out and ran. And the 400 indoors is notoriously pretty difficult to judge. You can either go out too hard, but again, it's 2 laps. And this suited me quite well because I thought, great, it's just 200s. Brilliant. I've done this a lot in training. And a few weeks before, I prepared for it with a 60 metres and ran, a really quick time for me and like 0.1 off my PB. And I thought that's my quickest ever opener as well. So I'm in pretty good shape despite, thinking that potentially my career might have been over with that injury I'd had, because that was other athletes that had the same, never got back to the shape they had before. So yeah, I think this year was always going to be a case of just get as fit as I possibly could. In pretty good shape at the start of the season. Couple of niggles with my calf, which came and kind of went again. I thought, right, okay, time to put some races down and I start the 2022 season. Unfortunately, the COVID that I managed to avoid, the whole of the actual COVID lockdown period for 2 years, I pick up at the start of June this year. I'm like, are you actually joking?
Oh, no.
Went down to London, competed for the National Athletic League for the club, and I think about 6 or 8 of us picked it up on the plane on the way back. Absolutely devastated, but I knew that, I still had time. This is the start of June, the qualification period ends. I've still got a bit of time. Very lucky that my COVID came and went as quick as it arrived. But before I actually realised I was positive, so it took me about a week to develop symptoms. I went and raced in that other period, went down to Birmingham, a place near Nuneaton, and I was halfway round. I thought, this 400 is going pretty well, great, I've hit the right pace. And halfway round, I was like, I can't breathe. What's going on? Finished my race. Felt really out of breath. I thought my time's quicker, but still, I didn't feel right. There's something not right here. Turned out the next day I tested positive for COVID, and I thought, okay, I must have got that in one of these competitions I've been at. It's likely to have been on the plane. So I had to obviously self-isolate and couldn't train, had to rest up for that weekend. and I had planned a race in Switzerland the next week to get my last race in before the qualification period hit. And I was very much going, right, come on, COVID test, you need to test negative, come on. And every day taking them, and it was Monday morning, testing negative, thought, great, I'll book my flight and go. So I've entered this competition, but it was very much, I might have been able to go. And to think that an illness or something like that can stop you competing. Like, I ran the Scottish Championships, like, not a lot of people knew this, but I was feeling rough that day from really bad cold that I'd picked up. And I just took an asthma inhaler and ran. I just thought, I need to just go for it. But COVID's a different kettle of fish. It's not a cold. It was.
Yeah, it is what it is.
So yeah, a bit disappointed not to quite perform the way I should have done this year before the cutoff. I think that's what this year's been a lot of challenges. I think a lot of people have had the same COVID thing. I think maybe getting slightly older, that different ways of training suited me actually. Less running, more strength based. But it's just a shame it's not all quite came together at the right time. I think I'd entered the World Masters Championships way back in April thinking, yeah, that can maybe be part of my year. It might be a good way to prep for the Commonwealth Games, a big competition right before it, good atmosphere, And I remember, thinking, right, okay, Commonwealth Games might not happen for me. Why don't we just go out there and just see what I can do? I think it came at the right time. It really did. I was in an airport in Poland when I discovered the team for the Commonwealth Games. And it's really hard to be on a plane on your own. You're flying to Finland. But no one to kind of share that disappointment with. I just remember looking at it going,
once again. Yeah. I
just thought, this dream, what's happening? Is this meant to be? I thought, really is, I just thought I must be, from what all I've achieved in the sport, the one thing you'd think, and a lot of athletes have always asked me this is, oh, you've been to that Commonwealth Games, haven't you? I was like, no. You've been to that one? No. And I think that's what the dream that's always kept me going, this thing that Charlie and I kind of grew. Because I was like, right, World Masters Championships, didn't really tell many people I'd went out here, actually. I don't think even told Charlie I was coming. Decided to go out there, and my boyfriend wasn't able to come, he was working. So I was out there myself, and I thought, right, let's go out and perform. I know nobody I'm competing against. This is a great opportunity to just go and run. And I ran the 200 metres on the Sunday, the 3rd.
So we're in Finland now, aren't we? We're now talking about Finland.
Yeah. So
this is your, in what I dream is my new inspirational story of never giving up, because this is people talk about never give up because you'll be at the end. This is 20 years and 4+ year cycles of people just getting at you, and now you are representing GB in the Masters League. So you're there. You're in Tampere, Finland. Did I pronounce that right, or have I butchered that?
Yeah, it's Tampere, yeah.
Tampere, right. I'll get there eventually. I'm British, we're dreadful at languages. Tampere, so you're in Tampere, Finland. You are out there, you're at the end of your redemption arc, feel-good story. This is a proper great moment. If you get the chance after this, look at Stacey's socials. The photos of her are, if you've listened to this, you'll be tearing up. It's so inspiring to see. So walk us through now. So on the way to the Masters League, you've just found out the Commonwealth Games team.
Yeah.
So you're on the plane. You've just sighed when you've read the team.
Yeah, I'm trying not to cry around strangers. That way when you're like so emotional, and it's nice to celebrate good emotions. Like I say, if your team scores their football goal, but to experience emotions like that, I just sat in my book and I just started journaling. And I was like, I'm on my way to the World Athletics Championships. This is going to be, I'm competing in this and this. I just thought I needed to change my focus straight away.
Yeah.
And I needed to turn that disappointment into fuel. And I thought, do you know what? I need to prove the selectors wrong and prove people wrong that, I have got it in me to have a good season. And I thought, why not take the opportunity? And when it comes to championships, like, I'm pretty hard to beat. I've always went into championships thinking that I'm going to win it. I'm never going to not, because a performance beforehand means nothing. A times on a sheet doesn't mean they run that time on that day. So I went in there. I knew that I was ranked quite highly on the times that we'd entered with. But again, the conditions on the day, turned up, won my heat, really good performance, and I smashed my season's best by half a second. I thought, okay, I'm in good shape here. But it turns out I had a really strong headwind. I thought, even better, okay, so let's get rid of this win for the final, and I'm going to really go some. The second heat, the girl ran quicker than what I'd ran, but then I looked at the result and it showed she didn't have any wind at all. I thought, okay, this is all to play for then.
Yes, this is a very even playing field.
Definitely. And I always came back I had lucky lane 6, I called it. So lane 6 I had for the heat, lane 6 I had for the final. And I'd won my British title from lane 6.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this 6 is going to be good for me. It's not the devil sign. It's good for me.
Yeah.
And I just went for it. And my race is on my Instagram, and they were lucky. Some of the other competitors in the British team filmed it for me. And I crossed the line. I thought, I've got this. But I remember Kelly Holmes crossing the line, and she's like, ah! And she's like, did I get it? Did I not? And she's like, that unsureness of her. And I was thinking, I better not celebrate too soon, because I don't know if I've got it or not. And I remember looking across at the scoreboard, and all I saw was my name and the announcer shouting. I was like, yes, like, this is me. Like, really? Like, and all the emotion of everything I'd been through, just hearing the team, trying to qualify, trying to chase times, when, for whatever reason, I couldn't quite do it when I needed to. On that day I did it. I was like, yes, this is it. Like, this is why I do the sport, to be winning medals, to be putting performances out. And what really got me is I'm walking around, I got my photo taken with the flag, which was really nice, and walking back round to get my stuff. Oh, you've been selected for drugs testing, off you go. And I'm
the good old anti-doping come down.
Definitely. So I'm like, okay, right, let's go. Off I go. Luckily, took somebody else from the team that knew, a bit about the process there. He'd been involved in anti-doping around the world. He works with them. And I was like, oh, you'll be a good person to come. And so I celebrated with him sitting in anti-doping, waiting until, I was able to give a sample. And then off I go, get my medal. He took the video of me. And I don't think there's any more special moment than getting the national anthem played as you're getting a medal.
No.
And I'm standing there going, I can't even remember the words. Like, it's just mush, It was just so special. And to feel like I'd won one gold, I thought, do you know what, Stacey, that's enough. Like, you could go home. You've won one. You're world champion. And to kind of take that lightly, like, I guess I never realised the implications of what I'd just done. I just knew that I'd won an hour race. But arguably that could be one of my best ever wins. And to have done it in the circumstances of, well, maybe not quite in the shape I'd like to have been in this season, obviously with COVID overhang. This is my first competition since COVID, and things haven't quite went to plan. And to come back after that horrendous injury, like, to be winning and running my quickest time in 3 years since my really good year a couple of years ago before COVID, I was like, this is brilliant, So I kind of came away from it. Monday, next day, I couldn't sleep at all overnight. Mm-hmm. I went out to celebrate. My post kind of race celebration was an anti-doping, so I never really got to go and celebrate it as anyone else would. I went and got a shower, I went out, and I had my medal in my bag. I thought, this is my special bit of hardware, I'm going to keep it close to me. And I'm walking around past a Burger King, and this guy's like, hey, well done, congratulations. And I'm thinking, I'm in normal clothes here. How do you know who I am? Like, I've got no on. I don't know who you are. Turns out he was getting his medal at the podium when I was. And chatting to my celebration was in Burger King, because nothing else was open by the time I got out and into to go and get some food in Tampere. So I met a couple of athletes who'd also got medals and started learning how to speak Spanish with them, and it was a cool night. I just wanted to forget unforgettable moments, because all you want to do is hug someone after you've won something like that, or celebrate with them.
Yeah.
But I had no one with me to do that with, so I was having to hug random teammates I'd never met before, and it was just a really good camaraderie within the British team. And I went out into the next event. I had a couple of days downtime in between, and I'd written on a bit of paper, 200 meter world champion, 400 meter world champion. I thought, I'm not going home with just one.
Yeah.
It's like, I've always done 2 events. I've always doubled up. I've never just won one title. I want to try and double up wherever I can. So if it's just doing the sprints when you're younger, you've got this automatic image that you can do 2 sprints, no problem. So I went out into that 400, and I remember feeling a couple of days after the 200, a bit of a come down, and I felt absolutely knackered. I thought, I don't feel great. What's up with me? I just feel like really flat. And I thought, it's just because of the heat.
Mm-hmm. Came
to the Wednesday morning, I was like, I really don't feel good. Like, I feel sick. This is weird. I thought, what's going on here? So I thought, right, just run the 400 heat. And, if I still feel rubbish, I can maybe go and see a doctor here or whatever. Maybe I've just eaten something. I goes and runs the 400 heat, qualifies pretty comfortably. I won my heat in like 58 seconds, like quite low 58, and it's quite an easy run for me. And the nicest thing was I'd got round it without any problems. I was like, great, my breathing's fine. happy days. COVID's not going to be a problem here. I hopefully don't think it will be anyway. The other he was won by a local favourite, and she ran 56 seconds, and I thought, okay, right, I need to go some to be beating her. So next day, wakes up again Thursday, feeling even worse. I was thinking, what am I still doing in Finland for? I feel so ill. I should really be in my bed, just chilling out and doing nothing. I think it was the come down after winning the 200. I was still, like, the emotions of everything had just come out. I just didn't feel great, and I got some antibiotics from the team doctor, and he said, like, you should be okay, take these. And if you feel well enough, come out and compete. I think I'd picked up a urine infection or something like that. And I went out in the 400 metre final. I'm up to about an hour before. I'm not even sure if I'm going to go on that start line because I'd rank with the 200. I really didn't think. I was like, it's like, come on, Stacey, right? You can run quicker in 58 too. I really had to coach myself. And every bit of mindfulness and experience and strength that I've used over the years, I had to draw on everything. I was like, right, get on that start line. The lane draw couldn't have been better. I had the fastest guy beside me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, right, I've already won the 200 and I beat you in the 200. You were third. I just need to get you to 200 metres and I've got this one. So I just need to get up on her and keep going. And I think I probably ran one of my smartest races I've ever ran because it wasn't about a time, it was about winning it. And I just knew I needed to get up on you by the first 200 metres. I paced myself really well, got up on her in the second bend. I thought, right, come on, Stacey, like my strength is the first 300. The last 100 I've always usually kept my form. But you never know with having COVID. Have I got it in this last straight? Have I not?
Mm-hmm.
Gets down to the last home straight. The home crowd is going wild. She's catching back up on me. I only had about a metre in the lead. And it was neck and neck going down the home straight into the last 30 metres. And I never knew this, but she was like a stride behind me. I couldn't see her. And the last 30 metres, I just kept strong and ran through the line and ran a massive season's best by like a second. And she was second. And I was like, I couldn't even celebrate though. I just crossed the line. I was like, yes. And then straight away I'm feeling rubbish.
Dropped. Yeah.
In a state of disbelief, but also relief, I think.
Wow.
Like, I've not only just won one here, I've came out and run probably the hardest event on the track, arguably one of the most toughest events you could ever do. And I've ended up with another gold. And I honestly, it didn't sink in. I went and got my medal. And I was just like, I don't think it still hasn't sunk in yet. I think having the medals here with my name on it and engraved and the time I ran and the event, what made it even more special was like I was out there on my own doing it. It was like going full circle from when I was like young Stacey, like starting out when I was 12. I'm doing something that I wanted to do and made the most of it. And yeah, it was just an experience of a lifetime. It really helped me heal. And it's really tough knowing that the Commonwealth Games are starting this week coming and I'm not there, but I'm like, would I have had that experience had I got picked? I don't know. But I can honestly say, like, to have had those results and to be sitting here with 2 golds, not just one, but 2, and know what went into them and kind of what the story was behind them. Like, it's never just plain sailing in sport. But I think in athletics, it can be really tough to get back to your level if you've been injured or ill. But to manage to get through every single thing. I guess the one thing I didn't touch on with COVID was everything changed for me. I changed running coach again, still distance coached by someone else, and then I've got still got no one to run with, but every track's shut. You're not allowed to use the track because you're not a member of that club. All these silly rules started up. So everything in my life changed. My physio, the business went bust, unfortunately, so I now had to get a new physio, had to get a new massage therapist. My podiatrist emigrated to Australia. I had to get a new podiatrist. I had to get every single support network that I'd built up around me had changed.
Wow.
Every single one. And I was like, I don't think this often happens. You often lose maybe a couple people in your team, but the whole team. So that's been in itself, the fact that I've done all of this on my own, it makes it even more special to make such a good outcome out of a not so great situation. This last year in my athletics career has been the toughest I've ever had. And yeah, I'm just so proud that I've managed to come away with like some good results, and hopefully I can keep it going for the rest of the season to come.
Well, Stacey, I'm proud of you. Like, and that's not even like a condescent. Like, I'm genuinely so proud. And you said it doesn't make sense, but just in case you needed some confirmation, Stacey Downie, you're world 200 meter and 400 meter champion, and you've earned every single step. And I can't. I can't think of a fitting way to end the main body of that podcast, but that was what. And I don't know if you clocked what you said when you described the final race, but all you spoke about was beating the person next to you. You didn't mention times at all. And if you remember what Charlie was saying to you when you were younger, he never once made you run against times. You were always running against people.
No, the only person you can beat is yourself. So, like, if you beat your best effort and then run your best race, that's all you can control. I think that's a really powerful thing. Like for COVID and for a lot of us, like having all those strange things happen that are not things you can control. I think that kind of brings home that when you are in a race, like the only thing you can control is how you run it. And yeah, I'm just glad that all my experience paid off, because it could have, I could have ended up third. I remember being in anti-doping and my friend was like, so if you came second, would you be happy? I was like, yeah, I'd be happy with another medal. Of course I would. But I've come here to win them both, So I guess you do put a lot of pressure on yourself, and going forward, I know that the next Commonwealth Games, might be a big ask. Who knows? I might still be fit when I'm 39. It's hard to say what the future holds, but I know that the next Masters Championships, the Worlds, is in Gothenburg, back with that track where my international career started, and it's in 2 years' time. So I could go in there and defend my titles. That would be quite a nice fitting way to kind of carry on my sport. Yeah, be quite a special thing to do. I don't know if anyone's done that, managed to kind of keep their titles. And also the other thing I'd kind of like to do for this season and in general is was any Masters champion, world champion, also being their national champion at the same time.
Okay, so you've got the Masters. So now well, I think you've summed that up perfectly, and now we all know where we're going to next get to see you. So all we have to do, because I don't know if you've seen the little clock, but I've had the most fun, and we've been talking for 3 hours.
Wow.
And it has flown. It genuinely has been I said this to you before we hit record. I love when I've got people here that I don't necessarily know as much about either their sport or them as a person, because it fills me with inspiration. So to end this on a lovely, cheery note, to show that everybody who works hard and strives gets what they deserve, which is what you got with the medals. Now that everybody's back home and COVID's not a thing, and I know you're not much of a drinker, but you still deserve a cracking celebration and a party. So you have 3 songs. What 3 songs are you going to pick to just, even if it's just you, your mum, your dad, Charlie, every coach that's ever put in, and your boyfriend? What 3 songs are you playing in the living room jukebox, and why?
There's got to be a Queen one in there somewhere.
After the karaoke, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. I've got quite a few. I don't really have like a running playlist as such, but any songs that kind of inspire me before I run, sometimes if I need a boost, I put them on. Nice. So I've got Under Pressure with Queen and David Bowie, and I've got I Want It All.
Okay.
So Queen songs for me are quite they were my favourite band, so they'd definitely be there.
Okay, so one by Queen to start, number 1, non-specific.
Need something cheesy in there, and I think I'd probably go for ABBA. They're always a crowd pleaser.
Love that.
Bit of ABBA. And one of my favourite songs actually is by U2, song 1, but it's not really a celebratory song. So that'd be my favourite song to play.
But if it's your song, it's your playlist, it's your 3.
Probably one that's a bit more mellow. The version with Mary J. Blige probably. But yeah, I've got a routine of always playing is it Dario G Sunshine?
Yes.
Kind of samba beat that I always play before I go and warm up. It's just my kind of song to kind of get me a bit more upbeat and kind of ready for it. So yeah, that'd be my 3.
Amazing. Stacey, I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for your evening. You've given me motivation. I'm going to be up early to go for a run because I'm working from home tomorrow, so I've got no excuse because I've got no commute. Where can everybody follow you on social media to keep up to date and see all these incredible photos and emotions just overflowing?
Yeah, sure. You can get me I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. You can get me on Twitter at Stacey Downie with the S and the D's in capitals. Or on Instagram, I'm Stacey041987.
Amazing. And all these will be down in the description. I can't say it enough, but Stacey, thank you so much. I've had so much fun. And now to the listeners at home, Season 2, Episode 9 is officially done and in the bag. As usual, listeners make this podcast what it is. The guests are exceptional, but it's you guys that get the benefit of hearing their amazing stories. I'm the lucky one that gets to help them share it, but we are nothing without the guests and the listeners on this show. So thank you all. As usual, leave a like, leave a comment, 5-star ratings make us go through the roof. Let other people know the amazing stories you get to hear. Stacey's words deserve to be heard by the world. As usual, all constructive criticism is always welcome. We're always want to make the podcast better. If you're going to be mean, I've got quite thick skin, so it doesn't really affect me. So I'm just going to steal your retweets for being funny. So have fun with that one. Leave a like. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again next week for the final episode of season 2. Cheerio. Goodbye.